One Piece Supreme Control, Chapter 221-240. Chapter 221, Just Be Happy. Ace and the others were slightly stunned when they heard Dylan's words, and looked up at the faces of the other people on the boat. The death gods are almost all serious. I understand. Ace nodded. Compared to these terrible guys who have long been famous in the New World and the world, their strength is really nothing. Whether you can become the captain depends on your future efforts. Ace, Yang Qing said provocatively, do you remember the agreement at that time? Second Division Captain, it's mine. Ace had a smile on his face, very confident. The crew members looked at each other and laughed, and Bucky laughed endlessly. Ha ha ha, I really want to know what kind of expression Enelu will have. Will he bake Ace? I wonder. That cold guy will definitely kill Ace, absolutely. Drizzt, Bucky, and Glades all started talking. Let the arrogant and destructive guy know that Ace is going to fight him for the captain of the second division. With that person's temper, I'm afraid he won't let Ace easily. Hey, what are you talking about? Who is Enelu? Ace shouted loudly. When he shouted this sentence, the crew members behind him all trembled, and their eyes showed horror. Enelu, could it be Thor? Enelu, they said in shock. Ha ha ha, that's right, that guy. Everyone laughed. Thor, Enelu, Ace touched his head. He had been around for so long, but he had never heard the name before. Is it very powerful? It's more than that, isn't it? He is the top 3 of the Death God group, known as the guy who can destroy an island. Controlling the power of thunder and lightning, nicknamed Thor. The bounty has reached more than 500 million. The crew shouted loudly in Ace's ear. It sounds amazing. Ace narrowed his eyes slightly, and then smiled, but that's what makes it interesting, isn't it? Yang Qing stood aside and watched Ace's expression, saw his confident look, and smiled. If you have confidence, I will teach you personally. During this time, you must make rapid progress. New World, the stage is not as good as the first half. You are still far behind. The smile on Ace's face disappeared, and he nodded very seriously. I see. At this time, Glades laughed and shouted, let's not talk about this, what we need most now is to celebrate. Go get your meal ready, Glades, my belly is already beating. Bucky complained. Glades turned and walked into the kitchen, where Ace sat with everyone. Hey, Ace, how do you know these guys? They are not ordinary pirates. Quietly, the crew members beside him secretly asked Ace. These guys are all world-famous guys. The danger is higher than any pirate. Did you see it? Ace showed the tattoo on his shoulder. I was one of them. I made an appointment with the captain at the time, and I will go to him when I grow up. This sword of oath as of the captain's first sword was also a greeting gift from him. The sword of the oath. Everyone looked at the slender western sword in Ace's hand, and they were amazed. They had never seen Ace draw this sword, but they knew that the other party cherished this sword very much. I just didn't expect that Ace was also a member of the Death God Pirates. So, what about the Spade Pirates? And Ace, your dream? The crew became heavier. After joining the Death God Pirates, should they disband the Spade Pirates? The Spade Pirates, of course, are still here. I once said that a pirate group that is not weaker than them must be established, but at present, because of your existence, I have failed. Ace laughed and said, however, the Spade Pirates will always exist. Will the head of the God of Death allow it? The crew of the Spade Pirates looked at Yang Qing, who was sitting on the side and instructing everyone to go out and bring wine. Yes, Ace laughed. He turned to look at Yang Qing. Yes. Captain, I'm still the captain of the Spade Pirates, don't you mind? Yang Qing looked at Ace suspiciously, but didn't understand. What did you say? I said, the Spade Pirates are still here, I'm the captain, and, I want to be the Pirate King. Ace shouted loudly. After saying these words, the ship was suddenly silent, and the crew of the Spade Pirates were stunned. They looked at Yang Qing, and their eyes were full of horror. This kind of offensive words, actually said, "Is Ace going to die? What is the dream of a pirate to go out to sea? It must be heading for the Pirate King." Ace actually said in front of such a big man that he wanted to be the Pirate King, and he also wanted to join the Spade Pirates. At this moment, even the group of Death God pirates were a little stunned. They didn't know how the captain would answer, and they were inexplicably nervous. Under the nervous gaze of everyone, Yang Qing touched his head and said, "Well, the Spade Pirates, you can be here. But whether you can become famous is up to you. I don't. We'll take care of you." Unbelievable flashed in the eyes of everyone. Under the light of the Death God pirates, there will still be a pirate group that dares to exist. As for One Piece, after a pause, Yang Qing spoke, with a deep tone. Everyone is more nervous. Compared with a pirate group, this title is undoubtedly more hated. The legendary God of Death. This chapter is not over. Click on the next page to continue reading. How to face Ace's dream. You can work hard if you want. However, it's not that easy for you to be in. Yang Qing's voice was very casual, making everyone present speechless. It's that simple. Is this the end? Dylan smiled. He had already guessed this scene. Their captain was like this. However, does it not matter to the title of One Piece? Such a result still made Dylan a little confused. What is he thinking? Was a smile on Ace's face, and he laughed loudly. "The captain, I'm welcome." "Well, as long as you are happy." Yang Qing waved his hand and said to himself, "One Piece's son. I don't know how strong he is. Ace, I really hope that you will continue on this path. If, one day, you can really be the Pirate King, then I will raise a glass for you." Chapter 222 Weakness. In the previous life, Yang Qing always believed that Ace did not grow up quickly because he became the captain of the second division of the Whitebeard Pirates. You know, what kind of character is Whitebeard? The aura and the aura are extremely amazing. At this moment, he is the strongest man in the world. Under his tyrannical aura, who can suppress him and cultivate that fearless, incomparably powerful aura and strength? Whitebeard took Ace, but in a sense, it cut off the way Ace truly grew into the strongest. Of course, this is only Yang Qing's personal thoughts. In the original book, Ace's strength is also extremely terrifying. In the Battle of the Top, he was able to fight against Aokiji for a short time, and his reputation spread all over the world. Being subservient to others, without that tyrannical aura that fears everything, and without that domineering aura, you cannot grow. Yang Qing's eyes flickered. The second division of Whitebeard has made you, but it also has a certain meaning. It ruined you. When Ace died, he didn't even have control over his armament and knowledge, and he didn't even see the tyrannical arrogance that burst out briefly when he was a child. Whether it was deliberately ignored in the anime, or whether Ace didn't know it at all, Yang Qing didn't know. But when Ace joined the Death God Pirates, he had already decided that no matter what method was used, Ace would grow up. One Piece's bloodline. Let him go. How high will he fly? Can he fly in the white clouds and overlook all beings? Yang Qing suddenly looked forward to it. He was never stingy about the strength of his partner. Everyone has their own strengths and their own way, and he will not interfere. If Ace can become stronger as soon as possible and awaken his aptitude as a king, where will he go with the support of One Piece's bloodline? It is because of this that Yang Qing acts so casually, and his attitude towards Ace is to the point of favoritism. Come here, ready to celebrate. Welcome to the return of Ace, and the addition of the Spade Pirates. Glades brought out a sumptuous meal at this moment, and I have to say that he did. The speed of the dishes was extremely fast, and the cooking skills had been honed to the realm of perfection. Then everyone saw that on the deck, jars of good wine were placed, and plates of food appeared, exuding fragrance. Ah! It smells so good. Ace shouted loudly. Celebrate the joining of Ace and his friends in the Spade Pirates. Yang Qing picked up the wine bowl and laughed loudly. Today, we won't go home if we don't get drunk. If you don't get drunk, you won't go home. Everyone laughed and raised their glasses, then drank it all. The wine of friends, the wine of partners, the unique atmosphere of pirates, the feast of celebration begins on the Reaper. At this moment, it seems that even the ship elf danced happily. The next day, when the sun shone on the deck, one by one, the group of Reaper woke up. "Captain, are you the first to wake up again?" Drizzt walked to the bow, looked at Yang Qing who was sitting on the bow, and said with a smile. "The wind here is very comfortable, it can make people very awake." Yang Qing smiled and said, "Is Ace awake?" "Not yet, that stinky boy, he's really sleepy." Drizzt couldn't help laughing. Everyone got up, and he was the only one who slept like a dead dog. It's not a good thing for a young man to sleep too much. Let him get up. Some things, no one wants to teach him, I will teach him. Yang Qing said lightly. Drizzt was stunned for a moment, then nodded. His right hand trembled, and a blue card appeared. As he threw it backward, it hit Ace in the face and shattered with a bang. Turned into icy water and poured it on Ace's face. The latter jumped up with a shudder all over his body. "Phew, splash me with water." Crew members all laughed secretly. Drizzt beckoned. "Ace, come here, the captain is looking for you." Ace touched his head and walked over. Drizzt brushed past him, shrugged his shoulders, and said, "Have fun." Inexplicable. Ace cursed and came to Yang Qing's side. "Captain, you are looking for me." "Well, your practice should also start." Yang Qing nodded, seeing Ace's puzzled eyes. "Do you feel that your practice has reached a bottleneck, that you are actually strong, but compared to other people, but still worse?" "A strange feeling." Ace narrowed his eyes, nodded and said, "Yes, I have almost controlled the power of the devil fruit. The temperature of the flame is also very high, and the range has reached my limit." "How do you feel compared to the generals?" Yang Qing asked. "General, both are from the nature department, I don't think the difference is too big," Ace said to himself. Yang Qing smiled and shook his head. "It seems that you haven't realized it yet." "What?" Ace wondered. "You haven't realized your own weakness." Yang Qing shook her head and smiled. "Weak?" Ace's eyes narrowed. He never felt that he was weak. He had the ability to burn fruit with the natural system. To be honest, he thought that even if he was not the strongest, he would not be too weak. "Can't even get on top." It is necessary for you to recognize the gap between yourself and the top powerhouses. Yang Qing did not explain too much. He turned back and shouted to Drizzt, "Drizzt, bring the boat to an island, let's teach these little guys how to use their power." Drizzt responded quickly, and the Reaper's course began to change. Dillons is also standing in front of the members of the Spade Pirates at the moment. His face is grim. "Next, I will be responsible for teaching you to become stronger. The time is very short, I hope you can grasp it." After all, that guy Ace said he wants to be the Pirate King. I really want to see, is he? This chapter is not over. Click on the next page to continue reading. Is bragging. It would be very difficult without your help. The eyes of the Spade Pirates froze, and they all became serious. Chapter 223 Teaching. Half an hour later, the huge Reaper approached an uninhabited island. Everyone jumped off the boat and looked inside the island, a little surprised. No one lives on this island, and the trees and plants are extremely huge. Of course, the most shocking thing is the huge creatures. Even the insects are 2 or 3 times the size of humans. "It's an incredible island, it looks very energetic," Yang Qing exclaimed. Then he smiled and said, "But this way, it's more suitable for your practice. There's not much time, let's get started." After speaking, Yang Qing called Ace, and the backs of the two gradually disappeared here. And Dillons said to the crew on the ship, "You wait on the ship, I will take them there." "Go, Dillons," cried Drizzt, laughing from the bow. Dillons nodded, turned around and left here with the Spade Pirates. The next movement may be a bit big. In order not to attract attention, it is better to go deeper. After about 3 kilometers deep into the island, Yang Qing stopped. Just here. Yang Qing turned around and looked at Ace. "First of all, what I need to know is how strong you are now." "Huh?" Ace looked at Yang Qing suspiciously. "Come and try." Yang Qing stretched out, shot, and signaled with a smile, "Would you like to try the gap between you and me?" Ace showed a big smile, and his eyes became sharp in an instant. "I can't ask for it. I also want to know how far I will be from you after all these years of hard work. You know, that's hell training." Yangqing smiled and stood on the spot just holding hands and said with a smile, "Come on, even if you shoot, then you will know that the gap between the two is as high as the sky and the earth." "Too underestimated," Ace shouted, his legs jumped suddenly, and his figure suddenly disappeared. His speed was unbelievable, and in almost an instant, he rose into the sky, a whirlwind kick, and his right foot swept towards Yangqing's head. "You look so energetic." Standing in the same place, Yangqing looked very calm. Facing the blowing leg, he still had a smile on his face. When his right foot approached the hair on his neck, his figure suddenly twisted slightly. It was this moment that caused Ace's pupils to shrink, and that powerful leg passed directly through Yangqing's neck. Immediately afterwards, when this leg completely passed by, Yangqing's right hand trembled and turned into a sword finger, poking directly at Ace's back. "Call!" A flame burst from behind, and Ace's face changed slightly, and this blow hit his elementalization. So fast. I didn't see how he escaped that kick at all. Ace was shocked, and then he turned around suddenly, his hands formed a gun-like shape, and then groups of flames moved towards Yangqing like bullets shoot away. Bang 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 bang. Shaking his head helplessly, Yangqing strode forward, his body swaying from side to side, like a dead leaf in the wind, unable to bear any strength. Flames passed through his figure one by one, fell on the plants behind him, and burned. Ace's series of attacks did not hit Yangqing once, causing his face to change slightly. He felt the pressure, the invisible pressure. The relaxed and casual expression on the face of the person in front of him made his heart very heavy. What? Unconsciously, Yangqing had reached Ace's face, clenched his right fist tightly, and hit it out quickly. Ohm! The air suddenly shrank, and the vacuum area appeared directly. The power of Yangqing's punch made the air roar constantly. Ace, who was opposite him, trembled all over, and a raging flame was burning. He simply released his elementalization neatly. Then, the right fist was also clenched, and a huge flaming fist quickly appeared on it. Fire fist. The huge fire fist was suddenly thrown, and at the same time, Yangqing's right fist also swept over Ace's head, which had turned into flames. Natural department, it's really troublesome. Shaking his head helplessly, Yangqing still smiled. However, the face of Ace on the opposite side had fine beads of sweat already appearing on his face. He was shocked to find that his close punch, even the high temperature that burned the ground, had no effect on Yangqing. Flame, isolated. The large group of flames was burning, but they were all around Yangqing's body, and none of them really hurt the latter. At this moment, it seemed as if the latter had in turn controlled his own flame, which made him feel at a loss. Since that's the case, it's time to let you know that elementalization is not omnipotent. The blue long sword behind him suddenly floated up on his own, and with a choking sound, the ice blue Longchen sword appeared in the air. It was grasped by Yangqing. Above the long sword, the icy blue aura continued to circulate. Yangqing's long sword passed through at a strange angle, and the tip of the sword swallowed a sharp sword intent. Then, he suddenly swept out towards Ace on the opposite side. So fast. Ace's pupils shrank. He drew his sword from Yangqing, and then stabbed it out. Almost in an instant, the opponent's speed was so fast that he couldn't see clearly. When he realized that his body reacted, the ice blue long sword had already swept over his body, causing his complexion to change greatly, and his whole body suddenly burst into flames. Elementalization. At this moment, Yangqing smiled slightly, turned his right hand, the back of the knife was facing forward, the blade was backward, and then with a bang, the flame suddenly went out on Ace's body, and the whole person was weakened for a moment. As hard as a cannonball. This chapter is not over. Click on the next page to continue reading. Was swept out and hit the big tree behind him. 3 seconds later, Ace stood up slowly, staring at the sword in Yangqing's hand, his eyes full of solemnity. This is a sword made of Halu stone. Halu stone is also the most lethal weapon against devil fruits. It is the first tool that can deal with you. Combat experience, physical fitness, reaction speed. If you are not strong enough, you just like before, the guy with the Halu stone weapon will kill him with one blow. Yang Qing walked forward, inserted the long sword into the scabbard behind him, and explained with a smile. The first one. Do you mean that there is a second way to deal with elementalization? Ace narrowed his eyes and asked seriously. He could see that the person in front of him was trying to tell him where his weaknesses were with facts. Yes, for me, there are at least 4 ways to kill you. Yang Qing said with a smile. 4 types, Ace said in shock. Next, it's the second one, you see it clearly. Chapter 224 As soon as Yang Qing's voice fell, Ace's eyes were fixed on the other party. Any devil fruit ability is controlled by humans and is elementalized. It looks passive on the surface, but in fact, it also implies a trace of active human control. Next, you will realize that when your reaction arc can't keep up with the speed of the enemy, even if you are elemental, you will be so powerless. Woo! There seemed to be a gust of wind in the field. Ace's pupils shrank, and he roared loudly. Fire fist! But almost in an instant, a touch of coldness made him tremble, sweat dripped from his forehead. Ace turned his head stiffly, and what he saw was Yang Qing in front of him. And at his erect neck, a hand was lightly pressed on it. My speed is so fast that you can't even do conditioned reflexes. Naturally, elementalization can't react. Under such circumstances, no matter how strong your ability is, what can you do? In fact, it is people who are powerful. Talent is the most critical point. Only when you are strong, will your fruit ability be strong. Ace nodded. He understood at this moment, the two were only physical skills, and there was probably a big gap in physical quality. This is the second method. Next, I will show you the third, and the power you need to control the most right now. Yang Qing's eyes narrowed, and he said solemnly, on his right hand, a black aura began to linger, and then he shouted, armed, domineering. What is this? Ace asked suspiciously. Armed and domineering, in addition to the seafloor stone, and the restraint conditions of the natural system ability, the only power that can touch the natural fruit ability entity, then, you will understand. Yang Qing said with a smile, and stepped forward. At the same time, his right fist was also thrown out. Ace's eyes trembled, and the elementalization was quickly used. This time, he would definitely be able to react. However, when Yang Qing's fist with black aura hit his flame, Ace changed color again, and his body suddenly flew out. At the same time, a severe pain spread throughout his body. It made him cry out. Pain, pain, this punch is like an old man's iron fist. Standing up, Ace looked at Yang Qing with a painful expression. Is this the domineering look of armed force? Yes, the armed color is domineering and can enhance the body's attack power and defense power. He can also be attached to the weapon, which has a good effect on those with natural fruit ability. It is also a new force popularized in the New World. Yang Qing nodding, and next, I will also teach you to use these 3 colors of domineering. 3-color domineering. Ace looked at Yang Qing. Armed, seen, and overlord. Yang Qing said solemnly, personally, what I want you to master most is overlord. Ace looked puzzled, but he didn't ask much at this time. He knew that Yang Qing would teach him later. Now, use your full strength, let me see how strong you are. Yang Qing motioned. Ace nodded, and then slammed his whole body into a raging flame. His expression became extremely hideous at this moment, and with a low roar, endless hot flames rushed out of his body, and erupted with the flames. A strong wind followed. Yang Qing stood in front of him, his black hair was blowing, and the heat wave hit his face, and he was also surprised. As expected of the natural system burning fruit, this kind of heat is very scary. If Ace can become stronger, what level will it reach? Great Flame Ring, Flame Emperor. With a low roar, a huge fireball appeared on Ace's right hand, expanding rapidly. Yang Qingqiao took a few steps back to avoid the scorching temperature. He could feel that the temperature on Ace's body was now enough to burn steel. After a distance, Yang Qing saw Ace's right hand suddenly swinging forward, and the fireball began to move slowly. While moving, it was still getting bigger. Today's volume is almost the size of a house. Drink! Ace shouted, and the huge fireball rushed towards Yang Qing. Amazing power! It's really good, Yang Qing said with a smile, his right hand stretched out, and after a tremor, a layer of blue-green scales appeared, and strange runes appeared on his face. Then, he suddenly punched and greeted the huge fireball in front of him. Kirin arm. Fire absorption. This fist swung out, surging with infinite power, and brought a gust of wind. But the most shocking thing is that the fireball that Ace attacked was completely absorbed by Yang Qing. The huge fireball changed from big to small, and after 5 seconds, it completely disappeared into the air. Ace was stunned, shocked beyond words. Is this his power? It's really terrifying. His power has no effect on the latter. Looking at Yang Qing's eyes, it became extremely complicated in an instant. Turning around, Yang Qing aimed his hand at the open space beside him. Firepower unleashed. Boom! The scorching fireball rushed out violently, and then exploded. The forest with a radius of 100 meters shook. On the Reaper, everyone laughed when they saw the white smoke rising from the center of the island. It seems that their training is very hard. I'm looking forward to Ace's future. Naturally, the burning fruit, will it become another Analu? The crew were all smiling and looking at the island. This chapter is not over. Click on the next page to continue reading. Okay, I have almost mastered your strength. I have to say, although you are very bad. Yang Qing said with a smile, making Ace's eyes dark, paused, and then said, however, in your case age, based on your knowledge, is already pretty good. Only then did Ace smile. He was really hit. In front of this smiling man, his mighty power became so weak. With your physical quality, you are qualified to learn new powers. Yang Qing said with a smile. As the armed color domineering, Ace's eyes lit up, and he was looking forward to the means to enhance his attack power and defense power. Yes, but the first thing I want you to control is not the armed color or the knowledge color. Yang Qing narrowed his eyes and said solemnly, it's the overlord color. Ace was stunned for a moment, then asked, domineering and domineering. Yes, because that will determine whether you have the qualifications to become a king. Compared to this, the other two types of domineering are not so crucial. Next, let me see your power, Ace. Yang Qing looked serious and shouted loudly. Chapter 225 _ Is my temperament good? Ace's eyes changed, and he became sharp. The next moment, a terrifying domineering aura emerged from Yang Qing's body. In an instant, this breath spread to all directions, and the domineering breath made the plants bend down at this moment, expressing their surrender. The giant animals that were walking leisurely, rolled their eyes and fell to the ground when they were hit by this terrifying momentum. Pressure. Ace was in front of his eyes, and when he was hit by this momentum, his mind was clouded almost immediately, and the whole person felt a little weak. Is this the tyrannical arrogance? Confused, Ace was a little shaky. Ace's mind was in a daze at the moment, and the whole person was in a state of dizziness. Yang Qing's voice rushed into his ears, and his whole body was immediately agitated. Resistance. Freedom. Fearlessness. Ace was stunned for a moment, and then he suddenly regained his spirits, reuniting the spirits that had just been swept away abruptly. The few spirits were slowly gathered up, and Ace's eyes gradually changed. Got to be clear. Although his people were still a little weak, the light in his eyes slowly lit up. Okay, yes, hold on, remember, don't faint. Yang Qing shouted, and the overlord rushed out again with a domineering buzz. This time, the overlord-colored aura was even more violent, spreading out in all directions. The terrifying aura had already caused physical damage, the trees and plants began to shake, and the surface of the vegetation was even cracked, with gaps appearing. And Ace, who was the first to bear the brunt, was even more shocked, and his brain was about to explode. No, I can't hold on anymore. My spirit is about to be dissipated, it's too strong. Ace's whole body was shaky, his eyes began to blur, his whole body was weak, and the light in his eyes dimmed. Keep it up, Yang Qing shouted in a low voice. Persistence, Ace murmured. He held back the emptiness of his mind, and then fought hard. Although the light in his eyes was weak, his spirit became more cohesive at this moment, as if it had been tempered. Yang Qing's face was heavy. Unlike him at the time, Ace was under the pressure of his own domineering overlord. Under this pressure, if he could resist, then the next thing would be much easier. Time and time again, the domineering arrogance deep in Ace's body will slowly awaken. And this time will not be too long. Shaking, Ace kept shaking, but he always insisted not to fall to the ground, his eyes were always clear. He has become accustomed to this domineering aura, and can stand in front of this aura. Try, gather your own spirit, integrate your will, the characteristics of your character, and your dreams into one, and then radiate it out. Yang Qing's voice sounded again, and Ace closed his eyes and began to search for his own spirit. In the dark space, there was nothing in front of Ace, and he couldn't see anything clearly. Gradually, a piece of terrifying sword light appeared around. This sword light was extremely sharp and terrifying, like 1,000 troops, coming towards him, making his complexion change and quickly dodging. What is this? Ace felt a familiar aura. This is the captain's domineering arrogance. Gradually, Ace understood, and he began to come into contact with this breath. The moment he touched it, his whole body was shaken, a fierce, domineering, solitary domineering swept through his body, almost instantly made him sweat like rain. In this domineering in front of the breath, he seemed to be destroyed immediately. This is my spiritual space. Ace's eyes flashed a hint of clarity. The captain's domineering arrogance is domineering, fierce, and only me, what about mine? My character, my dreams, and my natural will. Ace began to think, and gradually he came to his senses. Taking Yang Qing's domineering arrogance as a reference, he understood. Freedom, open-minded, cheerful, fearless, this is my domineering arrogance. Ace understood, and he saw that he began to glow in this dark space, and the golden light filled the entire space in an instant, and then exploded. The dark void suddenly became bright. Overlord, domineering. At this moment, Ace suddenly opened his eyes. His eyes were extremely sharp, and a domineering aura also spread out. Although it was still very weak, it was suppressed by Yang Qing in an instant, but this aura was the overlord. Color no doubt. Without surrender, under the condition of freedom, using Yang Qing's domineering arrogance as a medium, Ace finally awakened his own momentum. The traction between the chi veins made Ace quickly awaken the overlord aura. You really have this aptitude. Looking at Ace, Yang Qing slowly retracted his momentum and said with a smile. In the original book, Ace had burst out of this momentum when he was a child, and now, under his guidance, he finally awakened. Is this the tyrannical domineering look? Ace said slowly, feeling the aura that just disappeared, and appreciating the difference in himself. That's right, there are thousands of independent people. I am the only one who laughs at the heroes. This is the domineering look of a tyrant. Yang Qing nodded and smiled. Another way of fighting is to fight with will. The strong will win, and the weak will die. Will, Ace murmured. He wanted to use the domineering arrogance he had just mastered, but because he was not skilled, he didn't release it. You are still in the initial contact, and it will take a period of transition. Yang Qing explained, the overlord is domineering with willpower to intimidate the enemy. Anyone with weak willpower and less mental strength will be instantly stunned to the ground. His reach. This chapter is not over. Click on the next page to continue reading. Broad, only for the spiritual world, is the best weapon to win more with less. Ace's eyes lit up, the momentum spread. How big is the scope? With the domineering arrogance of the overlord, he can truly defeat 10,000 with one, and after awakening this momentum, he also faintly feels that he has changed a bit. Another effect is that the overlord is domineering and uses his chi to raise people, and he will make you step by step on the road of a real king. Chapter 226 Rapid Progress. Regarding Ace, Yang Qing did not hide anything. This character in the original drama ended in tragedy. He really wanted to know, if he grew up, what kind of ending would it be? It is said that the wheel of history is rolling forward and irreversible. I would like to see if Ace's ending can be changed. If he can't, I don't mind adding a kick. Yang Qing's eyes flickered. Looking at the immersed in the new power, Ace said with a smile in his heart. Next, I'll teach you how to use the domineering and armed domineering. Yang Qing's words made Ace get serious again. The arrogance of seeing and hearing has the characteristics of predicting the enemy's attack in the next second, and can perceive farther. If you practice to the deepest, you can even achieve the achievement of listening to the sound of everything. According to rumors, Roger, the Pirate King, is able to listen to the sound of everything. As a human being, communicating with all things. Quote. One Piece. Ace narrowed his eyes. The legendary figure often appeared in his ears, but he had never seen it himself, and his bloodline. He clenched his fist silently, and released it 3 seconds later. And armed domineering can improve a person's defense and attack power, attaching it to a weapon or body, like a layer of steel. In addition, it can also grab the entity of the natural fruit. Of course, the specific you need to find out for yourself. After the test just now, I have determined that you have the basic qualifications to cultivate two-color domineering. Yang Qing said lightly, your talent is very good, but it is beyond my expectations. It seems that you have a good bloodline. His whole body tightened. Ace stared at Yang Qing, his heart beating faster at this moment. Does he already know his identity? What? Your heart suddenly accelerated, and all the muscles in your body were tense. Are you tense? Yang Qing looked at him suspiciously. No, no. Ace relaxed and hid himself carefully, never letting other people know his secret. However, Yang Qing's next sentence turned him to petrification in an instant. Are you worried about the secret of your identity? Yang Qing suddenly realized, you are One Piece's child, I already knew this. What? Ace widened his eyes in shock. You, how did you know? I know a lot more than you know. Yang Qing said seriously, and then he smiled again. This secret is nothing to me. Maybe it will shock the whole world if it spreads out, but I really don't mind. All I know is that it is enough that you are my crew. Ace was stunned for a moment, and stared at Yang Qing's eyes closely. From these close eyes, he saw sincerity and casualness, as well as a little bit of indifference. It can be seen that the person in front of him really doesn't care about his identity. Captain, that's the captain. Ace laughed. Okay, then, follow me to learn the domineering and knowledgeable sex with me. I will only teach you for a month. It's up to you to learn how much you can learn. Yang Qing smiled lightly. Nodding seriously, Ace also became serious. Through the attitude of everyone on the Death God and the teachings of Yang Qing, he can also see that it is not easy to become the second division captain of the Death God pirates. That Thor, Anilu, is not an existence that he can fight against. Work hard, you must work hard, I'm still too far away. Ace clenched his fists and said fiercely in his heart. A month passed quickly. During this month, during the day, Yang Qing and Dylan's taught Ace and the Spade Pirates. At night, they sang on the Reaper and had a great time. The life of a pirate is like this, happy, simple, free, do whatever you want. The sky is blue, the breeze is blowing, and the island is in the middle. Yang Qing's speed was unbelievably fast. His fists were like the wind, with a terrifying air explosion, which turned into a shadow of fists in the sky, constantly attacking forward. On the opposite side, Ace, who was naked and topless, was like a dead leaf in the wind. His body easily dodged Yang Qing's fist with various incredible angles and movements. Ace's eyes were as calm as water, and the momentum on his body was very indifferent, like a stone, and he was very calm. In his eyes, any movement of Yang Qing was known to him one step in advance, and he could judge in a millisecond how to avoid this blow next. The fists came out in a series, and after punching a full 138 punches, Yang Qing closed his fists and used his left foot as an axis. Sweep out. Call. The wind picked up, Ace's eyes flashed, and he leaned back to avoid the kick. The next moment, the light in his eyes receded, and a black aura appeared on his right fist, attached to it, like steel. Armed color. Then, throw a punch. Yang Qing's right foot is in the air, and the balance of the whole body at the moment depends on the left foot. Ace's punch, for a while, has no energy to resist. But he didn't panic at all, just smiled slightly, bent his right leg, retracted his thigh, and covered it with a domineering dark armed color, and then moved towards the front very casually. Bang! Ace's fist collided with Yang Qing's thigh, and the surrounding space trembled, and the huge force shook Ace's whole body toward the back and smoothed out 10 meters, dragging it out for a long time. Mark of. What a powerful force. Having played so many times and each time, I was amazed by his strength. It's hard to imagine how such a huge power of the captain was cultivated. This chapter is not over. Click on the next page to continue reading. Ace's eyes were full of shock. He had a deep understanding of Yang Qing's enormous power. This person, if he doesn't use any means, is probably already terrifying to the extreme. At the very least, he had tried it before, and the other party didn't use the strange unicorn arm that could absorb flames, and he didn't use the armed color and the domineering color of the sight, but he still had no way to take the latter. I'm not in the same class as him at all. In the end, Ace could only shake his head with a wry smile and accept the fact. Hit Ace back with one leg. Yang Qing nodded in satisfaction. Yes, you are indeed very talented, and my teachings are here. In the future, the development of devil fruits, the development of armed sex, and the control of overlord sex will depend on you to work hard. Chapter 227 Female School Officer. After a month of teaching, your strength has improved very quickly, at least 3 times stronger than before. The most important thing is your mentality. You have the mentality of a real strong man. For Ace, Yang Qing is really satisfied. He inherited the bloodline of One Piece, and he was born with the aptitude and extraordinary talent of a king. He is very good at learning and works hard enough. He has all the conditions to become a strong man, all he lacks is a person to teach him. Also, Ace is very lucky. When he was young, he met Garp, a hero lieutenant general among the Marines. His strength was not generally strong. Similarly, for Ace, Garp also tried his best to teach him, laying an excellent foundation for him. If Ace didn't have the solid foundation and strong physique, no matter how powerful Yang Qing was, he wouldn't be able to let Ace control the 3-color domineering and make huge progress in just 1 month. Cap really wants to train him to be an outstanding sailor, and teach him with all his heart. Yang Qing praised in his heart. It has been a month, and he has recognized Ace's physical quality, reaction speed, and battle experience. It is clearer than anyone else who knows, and it can be seen from every bit that the shadow of the naval battle exists. Maybe he wanted to teach Ace the use of domineering when he became an adult, but what he didn't expect was that Ace ran away. Shaking his head, Yang Qing said to Ace. Let's go, start now, it's time for you to fight. The first half of the Great Waterway, there is no place for you to experience, follow me to the New World. Ace's eyes lit up, and a flash of joy flashed in his eyes. Really? Can you go to the New World now? Not bad, Yang Qing said with a smile, then walked over and rubbed Ace's head. You stinky boy, do you still want me to accompany you again? I'm very busy. Hey, boss, you are here, can you teach me something? Ace said with a smile. Let's go, the time has come. Yang Qing looked out of the island, where the death god had made an urging sound. Woo woo woo. On the Reaper, Drizzt became impatient. Old Eastern Continent country Ace is really slow. It's agreed that he will leave at noon today. If he doesn't leave, the Marines should be there. Luo looked at the horizon line, and said solemnly, I saw the eyeliner of the sea soldiers yesterday, and they have already spotted us. It's unavoidable to stay here too long, Dylan said. Hee, I think it will take only half a quarter of an hour at most, and the big man in the naval force should come over. Moria covered her mouth and smiled. HMPH, below the general level, do you have the courage to stand in front of us? Bucky said disdainfully, and then he said again, speaking of which, what happened to that boy Anilu? He said he was building an empty island. Jun, I haven't come back yet. I don't worry about anyone on the boat, so I can trust him the most. You should take care of yourself. Which time in the new world is it that you didn't cause the most trouble, and which time we didn't wipe your ass for you? Glades said mockingly, letting Bucky blush immediately. I didn't do it on purpose at the time of the Golden Lion. Who knew that a broken ship would be parked there under his pirate group? Bucky quibble. Cut. Everyone glanced at their mouths in unison, too lazy to pay attention to this funny comparison. At the center of the island, Yang Qing took Ace and walked out. At the same time, a Navy warship was heading towards the Reaper. At the bow of the ship, a slender female Navy soldier with a delicate face stood there quietly. Deep excitement and anticipation. From the epaulets on her shoulders, it was a school-level officer. Marine Headquarters. Marshal of the Warring States period, is it really all right to send her there? You know, she has only been in the Navy for 3 years, and, with her strength, I'm afraid she can't even bear the look of such a person. The Lieutenant General said with a worried expression, that woman, but a very famous figure in the sea soldiers, aside from her delicate face that is enough to fascinate thousands of men, her own talent is also very outstanding. Is it okay, can't you find out if you try it? Warring States said with a serious face. According to his information, the woman seems to have an unusual relationship with the big man. Moreover, it is just to try to understand the purpose of that person here, and there should not be much of a problem. At this time, Yang Qing and Ace had also arrived in front of the Reaper. Looking at the huge pirate ship that was ready to set off, Yang Qing showed a smile that could not help but laugh. This group of people are really in a hurry. Shaking his head, Yang Qing accelerated. Come on, Ace, if we don't leave, they will leave us both behind. Ah, when Ace was stunned, Yang Qing was already running. His face changed slightly, and Ace also accelerated his pace. A minute later, Yang Qing and Ace jumped back and forth and came to the deck of the Reaper. We're all here, right? Then I'm off. Drizzt glanced at the two of them and steered the Reaper away from the shore. Woo! The huge Grim Reaper trembled with a bang, and its speed suddenly accelerated. And just as they moved, a warship appeared on the horizon. Speed up and catch up with them. The incomparably beautiful woman shouted at the bow. Yes, Lieutenant Colonel. The seamen at the rear were full of nervous sweat, and they were scrambling to control the warship. They can't help but be nervous. That's a big man in the legend. One of their school-level warships is not good. That is, the whole army will be wiped out. This chapter is not over. Click on the next page to continue reading. No end. How can the headquarters be so stupid and order them to go to the bottom? Isn't this forcing them to die? And pity their lieutenant colonel. So beautiful, if one is bad and torn to shreds by those demons, what a pity. A crisp whistle sounded from the warship, and it came from far away and entered the ears of everyone on the Death God. Oh, have the sea soldiers caught up? Luo said coldly. It's just a small warship that has the guts to chase us. It's funny. Dylan's laughed, and then he waved. Drizzt, wait for him. I'll see what kind of person he is. Dare to do that. Boldness. Quote. Yang Qing sat on the bow and glanced at a warship slightly, and then withdrew his gaze. The warship was still far away from them at the moment, and the person on the boat could not be seen clearly, but based on the body shape, it could be faintly judged that it was a woman. Women. Is it a woman who came after us? It's interesting. Chapter 228 The Unexpected Person. Yang Qing had a slight interest in the chasing warship. Then, he turned his head, and the Marines had Dylan's to deal with. And Ace and the others looked even more curiously at the distance of the sea level. The Grim Reaper deliberately slowed down, and all the people on board looked at the fast-approaching naval warship. It's really interesting to face their sailors single-handedly. After about 5 minutes, the warship was getting closer and closer to the Reaper. The images of each other in the eyes of the two parties became clearer and clearer. Everyone on the Reaper was stunned when they saw that there was a woman on the bow. At this time, they could only see the outline of the woman's face. It still looks a little fuzzy. Unlike the woman on the bow, the soldiers on the warship began to tremble and tremble one by one. Is getting bigger. Those are legendary characters. Will they be wiped out if they are unhappy? The distance is getting closer again with time, and in a blink of an eye, the two sides are less than 1,000 meters away. At this moment, the crew of the Reaper finally saw the figure at the bow of the warship. It was also at this moment that Dylan's eyes suddenly widened. No, it's impossible, right? This way, this face. It's her. Dylan thought he had read it wrong, and looked back at the people beside him. When he saw the expressions on Moria, Drizzt, and others, he was instantly certain. Everyone's face has a ghostly expression. It's really her. Dylan turned back suddenly and looked at Yangqing at the bow, but saw that the latter was looking forward at the moment, and did not pay attention to the chasing warship. Hey, boss. Dylan's voice trembled. Huh. Yangqing didn't look back, just spoke up. You should look back. That woman on the bow of the warship, that female colonel. Dylan said in a strange tone. Yangqing was stunned for a moment, looking at the naval officer. He had just glanced at it, and it was no different. Turning his head slightly, Yangqing looked towards the bow of the warship. When he saw the figure on the boat clearly, his whole body trembled. This is Asuna. How could that be? Yangqing has a feeling of dreaming. Why is that woman in Rog Town here? And also changed into the clothes of a naval officer, and just appeared in his eyes. Is it her? Dylan's tone was a little teasing. However, Yangqing didn't care about Dylan's tone at the moment, just jumped off the bow in a stupid way, and then ran to the place where he could see the woman's face clearly, and carefully confirmed it. It's her, right, absolutely right. Yangqing affirmed. She even became a marine and found me. This fact made Yangqing a little surprised and embarrassed. Pirates are all wandering outside, rarely returning home, and even more, leaving their hometown, leaving their wives and children, but losing their lives in dangerous battles and changing seas, and never going back. Compared to the dead pirate, Yangqing is undoubtedly lucky, but if he says that he has no guilt for this woman who has hidden his heart, it must be false. When seeing this woman again, Yangqing's mood became extremely complicated. She actually came looking for me. The warship was already very close to the Reaper. When the two sides approached 10 meters, the warship slowly stopped. Asuna stood on the bow of the boat and looked up. Her delicate face was expressionless, her voice was clear, but it was particularly powerful. Death pirates, I'm Lieutenant Colonel of the Navy Headquarters, Asuna. Quote. It's her. Yangqing was finally determined, condescending, looking at this heroic and changing woman with complex eyes. She was silent for a while, not knowing what to say. Dylan glanced at him, and then said strangely, Asuna, why are you here? I came here to inquire about your group's intentions under the order of the Navy Headquarters. Why did you come here instead of staying in the New World? Asuna said with an indifferent expression and a very flat voice. Behind her, the faces of the sea soldiers were about to turn blue at this moment. The attitude of their superiors towards the legendary pirates is definitely not respectful, and even a bit bad. Yangqing let out a long breath at this moment, and then he waved his hand. You guys go back to the New World first, I'll go to the Asuna ship. What, boss, don't you have more important things? Dylan said unexpectedly. I will go by myself. Before heading to the World Imperial Court, let's go to the Marine Corps headquarters. Yangqing said with a complicated expression, and paused for a moment. I will meet them in person and let them understand my will. Quote. Are you going alone? Dylan's worried. Let Drizzt and Bucky go with you. No, I'm enough. Yang Qing waved his hand and refused directly. Then, he jumped out, flew out of the death god, and fell towards the small warship. On the Asuna warship, a group of sailors saw that the world-famous big man jumped toward their warship. They were so frightened that their buttocks urinated, and they kept retreating toward the rear. Asuna was the only one at the bow with a blank face. Da! With a soft sound, Yang Qing stood not far from Asuna, looking at the woman who was close at hand with a complicated expression. Asuna. Please call me Lieutenant Colonel Asuna. This chapter is not over. Click on the next page to continue reading. Pirate Lucifer, Asuna said indifferently, completely ignoring Yang Qing's identity. Slightly startled, a smile appeared on Yang Qing's face. I never thought that you would become a sea soldier. There will be a lot of things you can't think of, just like I wouldn't have thought that someone would leave me for such a long time. It would seem like they disappeared. Asuna said coldly, then turned her head towards the cabin of the warship going, Navy headquarters, to confirm your danger, please come with me, don't try to hide it, because the consequences will be very serious. Shaking his head helplessly, Yang Qing stepped up and followed. He really owed too much to this woman. On the Reaper, the crew watched Yang Qing disappear from their eyes, and then withdrew their sight. The boss just left. I didn't expect that Asuna would come, and she also became a sea soldier. Drizzt said with emotion. Don't talk nonsense, hurry back to the new world, we are still waiting for us. According to the news of the small group, the Golden Lions have been restless recently. Dylan's shouted softly. Chapter 229 Blackbeard. On the warship, Yang Qing followed Asuna's back foot and entered the cabin of the warship. With a snort, Asuna lit the candle in the cabin, and a light appeared in the dark cabin. Yang Qing gently came to Asuna, and the candle blown by the wind swayed left and right. Just as she was about to speak, she was pushed back by Asuna. Let me go, I'm going to put on the lampshade. Asuna's voice was as clear as an oriole, very pleasant to the ears. Yang Qing touched her nose, quietly watching Asuna do everything before she said a word. Asuna, me. Okay. After Asuna put the lampshade on and protected the fragile candle, she pulled over the table and chair, and said in a crisp voice to Yang Qing, you sit across from me, without my permission, you are not allowed. Approach me. Somewhat dumbfounded, Yang Qing withdrew the right hand that was pulled towards Asuna and sat down. Now, as a routine, the captain of the Death Pirates, Lucifer, what is the purpose of your coming to the first half of the Great Channel? Asuna stared at Yang Qing's face and asked in a deep voice. Just come and see. When Asuna was holding a pen and paper to write it down in detail, Yang Qing said this casually, causing the latter to frown. Please cooperate with my work. Asuna said coldly. Okay. Yang Qing was helpless, shrugged and said, I came to the first half of the Great Waterway, and I have some personal things to do. What private matter? Asuna asked. No comment, Yang Qing said. Asuna put the quill pen on the table lightly, and then said indifferently, can't you say it to me? Lucifer, you came to the first half of the Great Waterway, didn't you want to go to the East China Sea? Go to some place in the East China Sea. On an island to sea. Have you forgotten that there is someone waiting for you there? At the end, Asuna's expression was still calm, but her eyes were already glistening with tears. Yang Qing was a little flustered in his heart. He clearly understood what Asuna was thinking at the moment. After hesitating for a while, he said softly, Asuna, I'm sorry. I wanted to go to find you, and I wanted to go there countless times, but... He didn't say anything in the second half of the sentence, and everything would seem pale and powerless. So, have you forgotten me? At this time, Asuna finally couldn't bear it any longer. The resentment in her heart exploded, and she shouted loudly. She threw the quill in her hand to the opposite Yang Qing. The light quill hit Yang Qing, and then flew to the ground. Yang Qing bent down and picked up the quill, then stood up slowly, circled around, and came to Asuna's back. No, his voice was soft, and the quill was placed by Asuna's hand. How could I forget you? No matter who I forget, I will never forget you. I have already made sure that you are my wife, so how can I forget you? Asuna's whole body trembled, her head lowered, and crystal tears began to fall. This beautiful woman who appeared to be very determined and strong on the outside, at this moment, after facing the lover in her heart, after expressing a wave of resentment, she finally couldn't help the longing in her heart and cried out in a low voice. Hearing Asuna's cry, Yang Qing's whole body trembled, and without any hesitation, she hugged the figure in front of her into her arms. I'm sorry, Asuna, it's all my fault. Yang Qing's voice entered Asuna's ears, his chin was pressed on Asuna's shoulder, and the woman's unique and familiar fragrance was passed on. Entering his nose, a touch of nostalgia appeared in his eyes, and the longing in his heart also burst out at this moment. He misses this woman, misses it very much, thinks about it day and night, how could he not think about it? At this moment, after meeting each other again, facing each other, the throbbing of the heart, even if it is not said on the surface, but each other can feel it. You know, I miss you so much. Asuna turned around in a low voice, hugged Yang Qing, and cried, every time I hear your news, I feel happy for you, but at the same time, I feel a little different. Fear on your face, I am afraid that one day you will fall on the way forward, I will never see you again, and I will never wait for you again. Quote. My family has been urging me to get married, but I can't. For this reason, I quarreled with my parents many times. I told them that my man is a man of the sky, he is conquering the sea, he is conquering the world, but only by this, I can't convince them. A bounty is ushered in, but they are more disgusted. They are not allowed to marry their daughter to a pirate, or even a pirate who will never return. Yang Qing's hands tightened, hugging the person in his arms even tighter. So I ran out by myself, and I ran out with my younger brother. We were aimless, and we were stupidly trying to move towards the Great Channel. In the beginning, we also passed the magical upside-down mountain and saw the whale Rabu. I got your news from that old man. I was very happy, and I looked forward to meeting you and meeting you even more. But... Yang Qing's eyes narrowed and he asked loudly, but what? But we met a pirate. A trace of sadness appeared on Asuna's face. My brother Arante was badly injured, and he hasn't woken up yet. If Lieutenant General Kuris hadn't appeared, I'm afraid you wouldn't be able to do it again. I won't see you either. Yang Qing's face changed suddenly, and his eyes showed fierce killing intent. Who is it? Which pirate group did it? I don't know either. There is no flag on their pirate ship, and the leader is tall and calls himself Blackbeard. His strength is very powerful, and in the hands of Lieutenant General Kuris, he still escaped. This chapter is not over. Click on the next page to continue reading. Arendt was still in a coma at this time, and I couldn't go back to face my parents. With the help of Lieutenant General Kuris, I entered the Navy. There was sadness in Asuna's eyes, and her brother's serious injury made her feel very guilty. Asuna, I'm sorry. Yang Qing was very ashamed. If it wasn't for her, if it wasn't for herself, Asuna would not have encountered such a thing, and almost lost her own life, and even Arante was still alive at the moment. Comatose, and Blackbeard. His eyes suddenly became extremely sharp. What Yang Qing never expected was that this person he never thought would appear here. Marshal D. Titch. Blackbeard. If you move my woman, I won't let you go. Chapter 230 Navy Headquarters. Blackbeard, the biggest villain in the original novel, grew into a character of the Four Emperors. This is an extremely perverted and evil man. Compared with Doflamingo, who is like a poisonous snake behind his back, everything is hidden very deeply. This guy has a little more evil domineering, and he is also a very dangerous man. He has the means, can endure, and can pretend, and when the time is right, he will suddenly burst out, making people hard to guard against. Similarly, on the surface, he appears to be kind, idealistic, and a virtuous figure, but after tearing off the mask, people see his cruelty, ruthlessness and ruthlessness. Yang Qing would not have thought that he would appear in his sight at this time, and have such a big festival with him. It wasn't until one day 3 days ago that I received an order from the Lieutenant General to let me contact you and test your purpose. Asuna's voice entered Yang Qing's ears, causing a hint of a trace on the latter's face. Understand. He wondered how Asuna had entered the Marine Corps, but now, it was his own reason in the final analysis. Thank you for your hard work, Asuna. Yang Qing hugged Asuna tightly, staring at Asuna's eyes seriously. Looking at the beautiful face of the other party, the tears in his eyes, Yang Qing wiped away the tears with pity, and then went up. However, Asuna covered her mouth with her hand. What do you do? Ah, Yang Qing was stunned. I didn't say I forgive you. Asuna said lightly with a smile in her eyes. Yang Qing was stunned, and was pushed out by Asuna. What are you trying to do without leaving them and getting on my boat? Asuna asked. Go to the naval headquarters as you wish. Yang Qing replied, besides, I want to see Arante, maybe I can save him. What, really? Asuna said in surprise. Well, it shouldn't be a big problem. Yang Qing nodded. Then Asuna reacted and asked, what are you doing at the Marine Corps headquarters? As you go to the Marine Corps headquarters, the most likely possibility is to be arrested. With my current status, who knows? Yang Qing said casually. To be honest, he was really not sure whether the sea soldiers would attack him. Logically speaking, both sides of the alliance are suppressing time at the moment. The sea soldiers will not shoot at him, but if the latter is willing to sacrifice everything, it is not necessarily true. This is an unknown problem, only to go to know. Are you really going? Asuna asked worriedly. Going. Yang Qing nodded and said seriously, I will go back with you. There are some things that should be discussed with the naval marshal. During this time, I will trouble you. Humph. Asuna tilted her head. You stay here, I'll go and quiet them down. Yang Qing nodded with a smile, and he could see it from what he saw. At this time, the sailors on this ship were all terrified, for fear that he would accidentally dismantle the entire warship. Asuna walked out of the cabin bedroom, and then ordered the sailors to return immediately. After Asuna's arrangement, although she was still terrified, the sailors were able to move. The warship roared and moved. In the cabin bedroom, Asuna walked in, closed them slowly, and instructed the sailors outside. What I discussed with him are all important secrets. There is nothing to stay 3 meters away from here. Keep the door and don't let anyone in. But, Lieutenant Colonel, your safety. That person is, said the sea soldier worriedly. Don't worry. Besides, what does he want to do? Can't we stop it? Asuna said, making the sailors reluctantly give up. Finally, the door slowly closed. Yang Qing sat on the chair and looked at Asuna, who was walking step by step, with a slight smile in her eyes. What? Are you trying to fight me behind closed doors? Shameless. Asuna scolded with a smile. Being a pirate, I became slick. That's just in front of you. Yang Qing hugged Asuna. Her weight was very light, her tentacles were soft, flames burst from his eyes, and he stared deeply at the woman in his arms. You know what, I miss you so much. What do you think? Asuna asked, blushing. Mind, body, think about it. Yang Qing said directly, then hugged Asuna to the only wooden chuang in the room. I miss you too. Asuna closed her eyes and murmured in a low voice. Quietly looking at the beautiful woman in front of her, Yang Qing finally couldn't bear it any longer, and slowly pressed down. The candles flicker, spring and night. Two people who haven't seen each other for a long time, after meeting each other for the first time, they finally missed each other and resolved them together. Ha ha ha, just call me Tiki. My nickname is Blackbeard, which is exactly the opposite of Daddy's. Tiki, welcome to the Whitebeard Pirates and become my son. Whitebeard sat on the huge seat, said loudly, raised the huge bucket of wine in his hand, and drank it loudly. Raise your glass, my boys, and let's welcome Titch. Roar. On the Whitebeard Pirates, the atmosphere was warm, celebrating the newcomer. 5 days later, the Marine Corps headquarters, Marin Fando. At the port, a small warship slowly approached. There is nothing unusual about this. In the naval headquarters, there are countless ships of various sizes, and there is nothing to be concerned about. But what made the sailors in the port a little strange was that the sailors on this ship stood straight and looked nervous, even after entering the sea. This chapter is not over. Click on the next page to continue reading. The base camp of the soldiers, they seem to be still afraid of something. There's something wrong with this ship. Immediately, a naval officer judged that, with a wave of his hand, the team behind took out their weapons and stared at the small warship. On the small warship, Asuna's voice came out. Navy headquarters, here we are. There was a trace of worry in the voice. Is it finally here? Yang Qing walked out of the cabin, his thin figure and the smile on his face all seemed unrestrained and naturally open-minded. Glancing around, seeing the densely packed warships and the innumerable number of sailors made him even more sigh. Sea soldiers, there are so many. Chapter 231 I'm scared. At the port, the warships were close to each other. Above each warship, there were stern-faced sailors standing tall, with sharp eyes and imposing manners. At the port, teams of Marines were on guard, patrolling with guns. The naval defense here is dense, and it is the most powerful concentration of naval forces. Even Yang Qing was a little stunned at the moment. I'm afraid Whitebeard wouldn't dare to say that he can easily go in and out from here. The Golden Lion is as famous as the Whitebeard. The result of rushing here is to lose 2 legs and lose his freedom for a long time, making his strength drop to the lowest level in history. Behind him, the door of justice in the distance was greatly opened. A warship came back from the outside world and approached the port. When Yang Qing walked out of the cabin and came to the bow, a group of soldiers at the port also saw his face clearly, and the complexion changed in an instant. This is the god of death, Lucifer. The expressions of the officers changed suddenly, and even some sailors still looked hazy at the moment, feeling that they were in a dream. The world-famous pirate came to the Navy headquarters on a warship. Hey! One after another signal flares rushed into the sky, and in the face of this huge pirate, the Marines launched support without hesitation. In an instant, the entire sky was filled with white fog. The big guys in the depths of the Marine Corps headquarters were working, reviewing documents, and suddenly hearing this sharp voice, the whole body was shocked, and they asked a little strangely. Is this a support signal? When they were confirmed at the next moment, their faces changed slightly, and their expressions became serious. Quickly investigate the cause. Where did the flares come from? Who attacked the naval headquarters? Sengoku gave the order with a gloomy expression, without the slightest panic on his face. Also, close the door of justice and cut off the way for criminals. He believed that anyone who broke into the naval headquarters without permission would be unable to escape. At the port, a team of sailors quickly came here, and when Asuna's warship approached the coast, all guns were aimed at the man on the bow. Haha, this is treating me as an enemy. A helpless smile appeared on Yang Qing's face, and Asuna looked at him worriedly. Lucifer, is there any danger? Don't worry. The warship slowly docked. Yang Qing stepped forward, and then stood on the shore of the port, watching the fleet of sailors in front of him, and in all directions, there were officers leading the sailors, and they kept coming here for support, and the number was increasing. Many. The door of justice behind it, with a roar, began to slowly close. It's interesting. A smile appeared in Yang Qing's eyes, and then turned sharp. If we don't give you some seriousness when we meet for the first time, I'm afraid you'll think I'm easy to bully. His eyes narrowed suddenly, then widened suddenly. Buzz. The sharp and domineering overlord domineering arrogance roared out like a gust of wind, directly sweeping the entire Marin Fando. At this moment, the air was much thicker, the space began to distort, and the sea behind it was still and undulating. In front of this terrifying aura, no one could stand up and stand on the ground. At this moment, in front of Yang Qing, the tense sailors standing in front of them all rolled their eyes, fell softly to the ground, and lost consciousness. No matter they were senior officers or the most ordinary sailors, they couldn't bear Yang Qing's terrifying overlord looks domineering, as if at this moment, his will was instantly overwhelmed, and even his mind was lost. This domineering aura rammed violently, and released his terrifying aura recklessly throughout the Marine Corps headquarters. Yang Qing moved forward slowly, step by step, the crisp footsteps spread throughout Marin Fando. There were fewer and fewer people standing in front of him, and his figure kept moving forward. This is the strength of the god of death. Good, so scary. Behind Asuna's warship, the sailors shivered, their eyes full of terror. This domineering aura had avoided them just now, allowing their consciousness to be preserved. Asuna was also shocked, looking at the figure in front of her, her eyes were full of wonder. How could such a terrifying aura be hidden in that thin figure? Asuna, come on. Yang Qing's voice rang in her ears. Asuna was stunned, then jumped off the boat and stood beside Yang Qing. Asuna asked, looking at the large number of sailors lying on the ground. It's all right, I just passed out, I'll wake up in 3 days. Yang Qing said with a smile. Asuna nodded, and the two walked side by side toward the depths of the naval headquarters. Warring States and the others have also left the door at this moment, and they are heading towards the port quickly. When they walked to the empty port, they saw the sea soldiers lying on the ground in front of them. Road figure. I can't believe that he actually came in person. Warring States said solemnly. Haha, this kid is so curious, he came to the Navy headquarters alone, what is he trying to do? With a smile on his face, Garp bit down on the donut in his mouth, but he didn't worry at all. Aokiji stood aside, his eyes narrowed slightly, and his drowsy appearance became immediately sober. And in the eyes of Kizaru looking at the other person at the moment, a bright light began to appear. I dare to come here, it seems that I don't plan to go back again. Kizaru's tone was very cold. The incident when he was besieged by 3 people made him especially fresh in his memory, and he would never forget it for the rest of his life. All restraint, first find out the purpose of his coming. Warring States looked at the faces of the people present, and naturally understood what they were thinking. This chapter is not over, click on the next page to continue reading. At this time, he is one of the Wuhai. Lifting their steps, the most powerful warriors in the Navy moved towards Yang Qing. Yang Qing saw the Warring States and others, his eyes tightened slightly, his face became serious, and he also walked towards the other side. The Overlord is domineering and reckless. As Yang Qing advanced, he swept away the sea soldiers behind the Warring States and others, and let the figures fall to the ground, which also caused a sharp look in the eyes of the big men of the sea soldiers. When the two sides approached 10 meters, Warring States' face was already very gloomy. I need you to give us an explanation to take action at the naval headquarters without authorization. I'm not that tolerant person. Crack. Garp bit down on the donut and stared at Yang Qing carefully. A smile appeared on Yang Qing's face, and then said lazily. They're holding guns at me and I'm scared. Chapter 232 Try. In a word, the faces of the big bosses in the Navy headquarters turned gloomy. This explanation really doesn't seem like an explanation, it's more like playing tricks on them. Death, Lucifer, I think you need to figure out where you are at the moment. Warring States narrowed his eyes, staring at Yang Qing and said lightly, here, we can absolutely keep you. Buzz. The Overlord trembled with a domineering roar, and the sea soldiers showed their aura without showing weakness at this moment. Facing one of the world-famous big pirates, they still chose to shock the enemy with their aura. Let the other party know their position in terms of strength, and then it will be easier to have a conversation. The overlords of the two sides collided with domineering and fierce, and with a bang, the air began to distort slightly. At this moment, the two terrifying auras could no longer be restrained, and they spread wantonly in all directions. The aura that represented the spiritual will cause countless vortices to appear in the sky of the Navy headquarters at this moment. At this moment, a strange change occurred in the sky. The expressions of the people present changed greatly. Behind Yang Qing, Asuna's subordinates were mercilessly affected at this moment, foaming at the mouth, and their eyes fell to the ground. Asuna looked at the scene with some worry. The scene seems to be out of control. At this moment, both parties are testing. As long as one party is in a weak position, I am afraid that the other party will be unceremoniously suppressed. And the most dangerous is Yang Qing. With the god of one man, the danger he faces will be unimaginable. If you don't pay attention, Yang Qing may fall here today. However, if successful, the rewards can be huge. For a long period of time, the Marines will no longer have unfavorable thoughts on their side. After he goes to the depths of the New World, his base camp will be safe. Leave me here. Yang Qing laughed. It seems that I have to remind you that I have another identity. When the warring states heard this sentence, his complexion changed slightly, and it was extremely gloomy. Of course he remembered that the vile guy in front of him was still a heavenly dragon. Step by step toward the Marine Corps headquarters, Yang Qing slowly began to withdraw his momentum. Sit down and have a good talk, I think the temptation is enough. With a wave of the warring states period, the overlord domineering arrogance began to slowly subside. Countless sailors who fell on both sides lay on the ground, rolled their eyes, lost consciousness, and could not wake up without a long recovery. In this short period of time, because of the arrival of Yang Qing, the combat effectiveness of the naval headquarters has dropped by at least 40%. Come with us. Glancing at the fallen sailor, the warring state's face was very ugly. It is difficult to calculate how much losses these fallen navy will bring to the navy headquarters during this recovery period. Sengoku and the others turned around and walked towards the high naval building, followed by Yang Qing and Asuna. 10 minutes later, Yang Qing, warring states and others sat in front of the round table. The atmosphere was a little condensed. The people present were all standing at the highest rank of the Navy headquarters, and the lowest rank was Lieutenant General. All of them stared at Yang Qing with gloomy expressions, as if they were extremely patient with their desire to shoot at him. Ha, it seems that everyone here is not very friendly to me. Leaning halfway on the seat casually, Yang Qing had a relaxed expression and a smile on his face. Warring states patted the table, and the killing intent of the sea soldiers staring at Yang Qing dissipated a bit, but they still had a bad attitude. It is very difficult for them to tolerate the most powerful guy in this world except for the 4 emperors. Moreover, at this moment, he is alone, which is a great opportunity to get rid of him. If this person dies, the Death God pirates will be in chaos, and the entrance to the entire New World must be in chaos again. And the Marines already have a foundation at the entrance. If they increase their output, the next situation will inevitably usher in another situation. No matter how you calculate it, this is a surefire deal. His eyes began to flicker, and a lieutenant admiral of the Navy had begun to exercise stupidly in private. Warring states glanced at the crowd, and naturally knew what everyone was thinking, and even he hesitated at this moment. Looking at everyone's expressions, I really want to keep me. Yang Qing's expression was still casual, but there was a hint of sternness in his eyes. His right hand suddenly raised, and then photographed it. Bang! The huge sound spread throughout the conference room, the whole heavy round wooden table trembled, and a huge handprint appeared on the table. Yang Qing slowly retracted, wrapping his unicorn arm with scales. If you have this idea, let's try it. The pupils of the sailors shrank suddenly, and they could see clearly. At the moment when the right hand was photographed, his right arm was wrapped in a layer of scales, which was absolutely right. Devil fruit, animal type ability. He will use the second ability. The warring states period and the generals present were stunned and began to re-evaluate Yang Qing's strength. What the hell did this guy do? Did he really eat 2 devil fruits? Try it. Let's try it then. At this moment, Huang Yuan was shining brightly, and his entire body began to granulate. Last time, 3-on-1, it made the old man very uncomfortable. Almost at the same time, a splendid human-shaped light and shadow appeared in front of Yang Qing's desk, and then, in an instant, a foot stepped towards Yang Qing's head. Have you been kicked by the speed of light? Yang Qing's eyes narrowed, and he raised his right hand, and the dark-armed color quickly wrapped it up, and then blocked it in front of him. Bang! The loud voice spread throughout the conference room. Yang Qing sat on the table and chair, his body trembled slightly, and then. This chapter is not over. Click on the next page to continue reading. Calm was restored, and the seat under the butt was not damaged in the slightest. He completely endured the strength of General Huang Yuan's kick. The whole body didn't move, not even the seat under the butt was damaged in the slightest. This kid is very powerful. The lieutenant generals shrank their pupils and looked in shock at the two who had just briefly clashed. In the next moment, Kizaru's fists and feet turned into rays of light. In the eyes of outsiders, a small sun rose, and all his rays of light poured towards Yang Qing, who was sitting on the seat. Asuna watched this scene nervously, her heart beating faster. That's the general. Can he do it? Chapter 233 Fighting with the Four Emperors. The dazzling light stimulated the eyes of everyone present, and the warring state's eyes flickered without making a sound to stop it. At this moment, a narrow but equally shocking battle began. The speed of the yellow monkey is terrifying to the extreme. How fast is the light? Faster than your eyes can judge, faster than your reaction time. Even Yang Qing, at this moment, was able to barely catch the attack of the yellow monkey by seeing and hearing, and then he kept resisting with both hands. Countless rays of light, carrying terrifying power, attacked Yang Qing's body intensively. Bang bang bang. The dull and uninterrupted voice rang continuously, and 10 seconds later, Kizaru appeared on the table in front of Yang Qing with a dignified expression and fear. The moment it stopped attacking, the surrounding lieutenant generals jumped up almost instantly, and the wide cloak fell in the air and came to Yang Qing. Pulling the sword, then slashing down, the yellow monkey flashed, took a step back and moved away, with some gloating in his eyes. At the beginning, the three of you besieged the old man. Today, I also let you know what it feels like to be besieged. The sword brought a strong wind. Yang Qing squinted his eyes and raised his head, and clearly saw that the blade of his sword was wrapped in a domineering dark-armed color. These lieutenant generals are all elite level, and each of them has cultivated domineering to a pretty good level. When they took out the knife and slashed, the black light flickered, and almost instantly, it came to the top of Yang Qing's head. Kirin. His eyes suddenly sharpened. Yang Qing finally stood up for the first time. His arms were covered with a layer of scale armor at an extremely fast speed, and then the next moment, facing the 5 or 6 swords with extreme blocks, fierce welcome. When the crisp sound of swords clashing sounded, and the expressions of the 5 lieutenant generals who came from the siege changed at the same time. They saw the sparks that sprang up after the blade slashed the man's scales, as if it had slashed on steel. But it's not just that. It suddenly swelled, and a very terrifying force came from the huge scale armor. In an instant, they entered their bodies, and the 5 lieutenant generals flew out immediately, hitting the wall heavily, and there was a bang. A strand of blood dripped from the corners of the generals' mouths, and a human-shaped dent appeared on the wall behind them. What a powerful force! Warring states and the other unmoved people narrowed their eyes and said in their hearts, it seems that we still underestimated his power. Kizaru stood on the table, a long sword gleaming in his right hand. The usual lazy expression on his face had long since disappeared, replaced by a dignified and killing intent. That battle was hailed by him as the biggest failure in his life, and he will remember it for a lifetime. The atmosphere became quite solemn and tense at this moment. The lieutenant generals present and the naval management team were all silent, and their eyes were full of eagerness to try. If it does not stop, I believe that if it continues, it will evolve into all the naval battles present. Yang Qing is alone. Taking big strides, the Tiankong Yunjian in Kizaru's hands swung out lightly, but at that terrifying speed, Yang Qing immediately displayed his fruit ability. Behind him was unsheathed, and then the sword's blade was wrapped in a domineering aura of armed color, and it met with Kizaru's extremely fast lightsaber, flashing a dazzling light. In an instant, the two slashed hundreds of swords, and the attack and defense were terrifyingly tight. In a moment, they were completely unable to take down each other. Kizaru's face became more and more solemn, and his pressure increased. On the arm covered with scales, the strength is getting stronger every time, as if it can grow without limit. Bang bang bang. Suddenly, 3 dull sounds came out, and Warring States knocked on the table 3 times with an ugly face. "Come back, Kizaru, what a formality. This is the conference room of the Marine Corps headquarters, not the arena outside." The order from the Warring States period made Huang Yuan retreat, turned into a ray of light and disappeared in front of Yang Qing, and sat on the chair again, just staring at Yang Qing's eyes, which became even heavier. This kid, compared to a few years ago, is as powerful as a monster. The short test, although not very destructive, was because he concentrated all his strength in a very narrow range, almost exhausted his strength, but the other party dealt with it lightly, even his manipulation. All the abilities are not used, from the beginning to the end, only the extremely flexible reaction force and the armed domineering are used. By the way, there is also that unknown animal type ability fruit. The 5 lieutenant generals who vomited blood sat in their seats with ugly expressions. Yang Qing glanced around and looked at the many naval officers who had calmed down a lot. He smiled slightly and said, "It seems that you have already completed the test, so you can have a good conversation." The naval officers were silent. Yang Qing's strength was beyond their expectations, and their hearts were extremely heavy. General Kizaru's test, but did not test out his details, but 5 elite lieutenant generals were seriously injured. From the beginning to the end, he didn't even move more than a meter away. This kid, it's terrible. The sea soldiers were aware of this terrible fact, and they were extremely jealous of Yang Qing's strength. "Then, let's get down to business. Lucifer, you took the liberty to come to our naval headquarters. What's your purpose?" Warring States was not at all embarrassed about the battle just now, and asked in a serious tone. "I just have something to trouble you." Yang Qing's tone was also a little serious. "Oh, talk about it." Warring States rode. Now that the temptation is over, the official conversation should begin. In any case, Yang Qing's identity at the moment is still Wu Hai. Before the relationship broke down, This chapter is not over. Click on the next page to continue reading. Still a partner. It's just this partner. I don't know when it will break. I'm going to see the 4 emperors. Yang Qing didn't hide anything. He simply said. His eyes became sharp, and he looked at the eyes of the Warring States on the opposite side. "So, I hope that the Marines here will not leave the site before I leave. When I'm in the middle of nowhere, make trouble and make small moves behind my back." What? Hearing Yang Qing's words, the expressions of everyone present changed greatly. "You want to go to war with the 4 emperors?" Warring States said loudly. "Going to war? No, 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 it's not a war." Yang Qing touched the back of his head, suddenly thought about it, and said with a smile, "Forget it, whatever you think, you have to fight anyway." As if I were going to fight them. Chapter 234 Save Atlanta. As soon as Yang Qing said this, all the Marines present were shocked. The overlord at the entrance of the New World, in front of them, personally announced that he would enter the depths of the New World and fight the 4 emperors. They won't doubt the truthfulness of Yang Qing's words. People like Yang Qing are disdainful of lying. Since he said he would go, he would definitely go. You want to challenge the status of the 4 emperors? Are you ready to take office as the 4 emperors? Warring States asked gloomily with an ugly face. He really didn't want to see another pirate force on the same level as the 4 emperors appear on the sea. Because that would put enormous pressure on the navy, the 4 emperors had enough. If one more person becomes the 5 emperors, how crazy will the entire sea be? Well, don't be nervous, it's just a grudge with Whitebeard. Besides, someone in the New World has been looking forward to fighting me, so I'll go and fulfill his wish. Yang Qing's eyes were casual and her expression was very not give a damn about. He didn't seem to care much about entering the depths of the New World. What do you want us to do? Warring States' eyes flickered and he asked. At this moment, the sailors in front of the round table became quiet. They knew that at this moment, the matters discussed by the 2 sides would be extremely important events in the whole world, and he would involve the changes in life and death of countless forces. What? Yang Qing raised his eyebrows, then smiled. You don't need to do anything. Yes, You just don't need to do anything. Let's go to the play. Yang Qing's words echoed in the conference room, making the expressions of the sea soldiers present extremely ugly, and warring states clench their fists. This damn boy. Asuna followed Yang Qing nervously, then grabbed his hand. Why, not a naval soldier? Yang Qing asked with a smile. I don't like Marines in the first place. Asuna said playfully, then stared at Yang Qing. Don't you want me to follow you? Yang Qing was stunned for a moment, then smiled and said, how come? I'm just afraid you're in danger. No, Miss Ben, she is very powerful now. Asuna said confidently, you can do your own thing with confidence. If you protect yourself, I will definitely be fine. Shaking his head with a smile, Yang Qing stopped responding to Asuna. He had already secretly decided in his heart to select a few reliable subordinates and hide around Asuna to protect this woman. Where is Atlan? Take me there, I want to see him. Yang Qing asked. Speaking of Atlan, the smile on Asuna's face quickly faded, and then she looked at Yang Qing and said, are you really sure of saving him? Don't bring me hope, but let me down. The doctors of the sea soldiers have seen it. Atlanta, there's nothing they can do. I'll hate you for the rest of my life if you just make me happy. Yang Qing was slightly startled, then shook his head and said, no, don't worry, even if I can't, Luo and Mori are sure. As for the sea soldiers, was a touch of disdain on his face, and he said with a smile, I don't despise their medical standards. Was this guy who took care of Asuna when she went to sea? With a beautiful face almost identical to Asuna's, this young boy is as handsome as a woman. He lay there, exuding a touch of aristocratic temperament, and his attraction to other opposite sex was almost extreme. How can Atlan be rescued? Asuna asked nervously. Yang Qing nodded, the ability to control the fruit wrapped around Atlan's body, and then figured out the reason for his injury within 3 breaths. It's basically no problem, he should have suffered a serious head injury, causing blood to ooze in his skull, and this position is very sensitive. If the knife is operated without authorization, it will affect him, so those doctors gave up treatment. Yes, that's what the doctors said. Asuna was a little excited. Do you really have a solution? Don't worry, my fruit ability is fine. Yang Qing nodded and affirmed. Later, he spread the fruit ability, carefully wrapped the ability around Atlan's head, and controlled the blood in the skull, forcing them to dissolve into the finest particles from the skin and quickly seep out. After about 20 breaths, the back of Atlan's head and the pillow were stained red with a lot of blood. Okay, the blood has been guided out by me, and the next step is to repair his damaged cranial nerve. Yang Qing's right hand stretched out, wrapped in fine scale armor, and the other hand pulled out the Longchen sword. My unicorn blood has a special function of quickly recovering injuries. Although it is not as good as the phoenix, it is also very scary. It is not a big problem to repair his injuries. Long Quanjian quickly cut the palm of his hand, and a large amount of blood appeared from Yang Qing's hand, and then dripped down into Atlan's mouth. After controlling his blood, it entered Atlan's body. On Yang Qing's right hand, the wound healed quickly. In just 10 breaths, the scab began to form and then fell off spontaneously. After 30 breaths, not even a trace of scar could be seen. Wait for an hour, and he will wake up. You go to prepare some sparse food first. It must be digested well. He may be very hungry when he wakes up. Yang Qing ordered again. Okay. Asuna was so excited that she almost burst into tears. Her brother's condition has always been a thorn. She once fell into deep self-blame and hatred for Yang Qing because of this. Thinking of today, I can finally solve her knot. Smiling and signaling Asuna to leave quickly, Yang Qing's eyes narrowed suddenly, and a domineering aura swept out of him. The body has been repaired. This chapter is not over. Click on the next page to continue reading. Completed. The rest is mental stimulation. Otherwise, even if I wake up, I will lose my memory. I don't want such a result. Buzz. The ferocious aura of Overlord surging out of Yang Qing's body pierced directly into Atlan's mind, causing his entire body to tremble at this moment and his muscles tensed tightly. Yang Qing controlled the ability to control the fruit, quickly observed the state of Atlan's mind, and saw a small electric current appearing in his mind. The excitement isn't enough. Buzz. The domineering arrogance poured out again. Atlan's whole body began to tremble, and his eyelashes were constantly shaking. Chapter 235 The New Follower. Seeing that Atlan's whole body was shaking, a smile appeared in Yang Qing's eyes. The overlord domineering stimulation finally worked, and then he only needed to wait for his body to start reacting. The sea of consciousness awakened, and then he could truly wake up. An hour later, in the eyes of Yang Qing and Asuna, Atlan's eyebrows trembled slightly before opening his eyes. The first thing he saw was Yang Qing, with a confused look in his eyes, and then when he saw Asuna, his whole body suddenly shook. Sister, am I dead? Where is this place? Atlan said in a daze. Seeing her brother recognize her, Asuna burst into tears with excitement and hugged Atlan tightly. It's great, you finally woke up, it's great. Worry about me. Yang Qing also smiled, looking at the pair of siblings in front of her. Her heart was very complicated. It was because of him that the two almost separated yin and yang and never saw each other again. Fortunately, the result was perfect, and Atlan finally woke up. I'm so hungry, it seems like I haven't eaten for a long time. Atlan was very weak, and there was a constant gurgling in his stomach. Asuna hurriedly brought up the porridge that she had just boiled. The porridge had already been boiled very softly and was very easy to digest. It was just right for a patient like Atlanta who had just woken up. You've been in a coma for 3 years, and you finally woke up. Now I can explain to my parents. I'll take you home in a few days. Seeing Atlanta drinking quickly, her complexion improved a lot. Na finally breathed a sigh of relief. No, sister, aren't we going to find my brother-in-law? He is a world-famous pirate. I want to see what he is like. I want to hang out with him. Atlan refused, his tone very serious. It is yearning. What is the life of a real pirate? Yang Qing was dumbfounded. Asuna poked Atlan's forehead. No, you have to go back. No, I won't go back. Atlan resisted, just now noticing Yang Qing. He couldn't help asking, who is this guy? He saved your life, is your savior, and is also your brother-in-law. Asuna said with a smile. Hello, Atlanta, I'm Lucifer, your brother-in-law. Yang Qing said with a smile. Hearing Yang Qing's words introducing himself, Atlan was stunned for a moment, and after he reacted, he couldn't help stunned, and he started to stutter. You are Lucifer, the great pirate of death. That bounty is very scary guy. Sister, have you found him? Looking at the two people in front of him incredulously, Atlan was still staring at Yang Qing, with great admiration in his heart. It's almost exactly the same as the one on the bounty order. It's me, it's really the legendary great pirate Lucifer. His heart was very excited. For Yang Qing, Atlan admired very much. His sister had told him how amazing this person was, how unique his temperament was, and how capable he was when he was a child, and he sneered at the beginning. How could the pirates get into his eyes? Moreover, he has always thought that pirates are evil deeds, and they are not good people. But when the big bounty came out and the explosive news came out, he was deeply shocked. What kind of man made the sea soldiers and the imperial court of the world so fearful? This person almost destroyed the entire judicial island, and his actions in the New World immediately after that made the whole world boil. Atlan's heart was completely shocked. The overlord of the New World, the mighty existence that competes with the 4 emperors, is very terrifying. Although he didn't know it, he had a general impression. When he set off on the voyage with his sister, everything he experienced and encountered on the road made him deeply understand what a terrible character the pirates in the New World are. Just the first half of the Great Waterway is the graveyard of countless pirates, not to mention the New World. Brother-in-law, let me follow you in the future. I can do anything. I adore you so much. Atlan, who was still young, said very loudly. Yang Qing was a little speechless, and finally looked at Asuna and said, listen to your sister. Sister. Atlan looked at Asuna pitifully, with anticipation and longing on his face. How about you take him to practice? Asuna said uncertainly, I'm just worried about his safety. All right, a young boy should know more about the vastness of the sea. Yangqing nodded with a smile, then looked at Atlan and said solemnly, Boy, are you a man from the sea? I am. Atlan flipped over the chuang and said loudly. Then are you afraid of death? The voice became low. Yangqing stared at Atlan's eyes, and did not use the domineering arrogance, but there was still a terrifying aura that swept through Atlan's body, causing the latter to tremble. I'm not afraid. I'm not afraid of death. Atlan raised his neck and said loudly. Yangqing smiled, nodded with satisfaction, and said, Yes, then you can follow me in the future. Yangqing will naturally not be stingy about his brother-in-law. He has already planned to educate this kid in his heart. Atlanta looks like 15 or 16 years old. Because of the exercise since childhood, although his body is not as strong as Ace and others, it is not bad. If you train for a year or two, it should be pretty good. Yangqing thought slightly. Also, Asuna's younger brother is also trustworthy. The power is huge, and there are countless subordinates. Even Yangqing can't figure out how many backbone crew members the Death God pirates have at this time, and how many are trustworthy. This chapter is not over. Click on the next page to continue reading. It's normal, trust is the hardest thing at any time. On the contrary, the people who are close to you are the most trustworthy. In addition to Dylan's and other veterans, Yangqing's closest people are nothing more than his parents and younger brother, and his lover Asuna Atlan. Following me is going to take a lot of hardship. You kid, get ready. Yangqing smiled at Atlan. Brother-in-law, I'm not afraid to endure hardship. It's my honor to be behind Lucifer, the overlord of the New World. Yatra said excitedly. Ha ha, good. Yangqing laughed. Asuna rolled her eyes. Did the two of them forget her existence for a while? Yes, there are very important things to do. Don't be frightened, you will lose my people. Yangqing said loudly. No, Atlanta said. Chapter 236 The World. Asuna, do you want to come with me? Turning his head, Yangqing asked Asuna, a look of anticipation in his eyes. In his heart, Yangqing really wanted to be with his woman. However, he respects the other's choice more. Of course. In the eyes of Yangqing and Atlan, Asuna replied with a smile. Okay, since that's the case, let's go. Half an hour later, the Navy headquarters dispatched a warship, and the big men of the Navy stood at the port of the headquarters, staring gloomily at Yangqing and the three of them leaving. In the face of justice and love, someone will always choose the wrong path. A tall middle-aged lieutenant general shook his head and sighed. Warring States was expressionless as he stared at Yangqing and left, wondering what he was thinking. The route of the World Court is controlled by the sailors on the naval warship, and Yangqing and the three don't have to worry about it. Atlan has just recovered, and his body is still a little weak, so he can only lie on the hospital bed and slowly recover. Yangqing and Asuna accompany this handsome and lively boy to chat together. On Yangqing's way to the Imperial Court of the World, the sea soldiers had already reported the news. I understand, the rest will be handled by the Imperial Court, and on the side of the sea soldiers, just do your own thing. An indifferent voice came from the phone bug, and then hung up tightly. I think there is a 70% chance that the World Court will agree to that kid's request, which means that it is very difficult for us to make any big moves when he goes to the depths of the New World. Carp biting a donut, he said casually. Sengoku didn't say a word, just nodded with an ugly face. Under the order of the court, as an army, he must obey the order. Even his immediate boss, under the orders of the management, can only obey. Army, always obey in politics. This is the eternal truth. If Yangqing asks as a Tianlong person and talks about conditions, you don't need to think about the outcome of this matter. On the warship, Yangqing watched Asuna and Atlan chat happily with a smile in his eyes. He walked out of the boat silently, found a corner of Haifeng Jiaotong University, took out the phone bug in his arms, and dialed. Hello. came an arrogant voice from the phone bug. It's me, Yang Qing said lightly. Lord Lucifer Saint. The voice in the phone bug was a little surprised, mixed with panic and fear, and the tone was lowered a lot. I asked you to prepare, are you ready? Yang Qing's tone was very cold, and there were orders between the lines. Okay, it's done. The World Court has made arrangements. You can come here anytime. Little Old Saint will serve the adults. Old Saint's voice was very flattering. I came here on a Navy warship. Be ready to pick me up, and help me find a place to live. I need to stay there for a while. Yang Qing ordered lightly. Little understand, everything will be prepared for you. Old Saint whispered. The above, let's talk about other things when I arrive. Yang Qing finished and hung up the phone. In the World Court. Old Saint looked terrified, sweating profusely when he heard that the phone worm was silent, and just now heaved a long sigh of relief. Then, he looked outside, the expression on his face covered by the bubbles became extremely indifferent, and he strode out. He was the first branch of the Tianlong people to submit to the Yang Qing family, and there were many others like him. Like these Tianlong people, they either live in high positions in the world's imperial court, or they go to a place far away from the Tiangao emperor to be the land rich. Each one has extremely high energy, and their status is also terrifyingly high. When it comes to fighting, they are inferior to weak chickens, but when it comes to politics, they are not something that ordinary people can play with them. Yang Qing to find Old Saint, and this kid occupies a position in the World Court. Old Saint walked out of the room, he loudly ordered to his subordinates. Quickly help me find a top-level hotel, remember, it must be the top-level, scale, and grade can't be worse than the Tianlong People's Palace. Find hundreds of dancers, and each of them must be young, beautiful, and in good shape. Finally, the group of bastards who notified the court to me, all firmly remember what Lao Tzu said before, don't let them forget. His tone no longer had the fear and caution when facing Yang Qing, and became extremely fierce and aloof. I understand, the little one will do it right away. The subordinates replied hurriedly with panic on their faces, then turned around and ran out. They did not dare to slack off according to the instructions of Lord Tianlong. The people leave, Old Saint's face relaxed. I hope that Lord is satisfied. There are still some delicate things to prepare, I have to do it myself. In a low voice, Old Saint left here with a look of caution and seriousness. Time passed slowly, and Yang Qing and Asuna finally approached the place where the World Court was. According to legend, the Holy Land Marijoa is also the place where the dragon people live. Different from the living quarters of the Tianlong people, the headquarters of the World Imperial Court is the place where everything in the world is concentrated. Here gathers the authority of more than 170 allied countries from all over the world, as well as the majesty of the world's highest noble Tianlong people. The other 5 old stars, the headquarters of the world's secret espionage organization CP, are also here. Just approaching here, the 3 of them stood on the bow and felt a deep sense of solemnity. 170 allied countries, and the powerful deterrence of force brought a unique atmosphere of nobility and majesty to this place. The court of the world. The real base camp, even Yang Qing has never been there. The defense here is better than the naval headquarters. This chapter is not over, click on the next page to continue reading. Strict, including the Navy and the Army, are all guarding the Crimson Continent here, and the white flag that symbolizes the whole world flutters in the wind, so that no madman or daring person dares to despise this place. The warship slowly docked, and Yang Qing and Asuna stepped off the bow. At this moment, a group of men in black suits suddenly turned their heads and looked here. The leader was a tall and thin man with a bubble. The moment they saw Yang Qing, they were happy, and then fear flashed in his eyes. Sir, Old Saint shouted loudly. Then, the Tianlong man ran over quickly with a group of serious-looking men in black suits. Ols, how are you preparing? Yang Qing asked with a faint smile the moment he saw Ols. It's ready, sir, please rest assured. Ols said respectfully, but his eyes involuntarily turned to the 2 people beside Yang Qing. Chapter 237 Jess Saint _ It's better not to look where you shouldn't, understand this. Just as Oles watched, an icy voice rang from Oles' ears, causing the latter to break out in cold sweat. Understand, he whispered immediately, Oles' head lowered, everything is ready for you, you should rest first. Let's lead the way. It seems that the comfortable life of the Tianlong people makes you not know how to be superior or inferior. Yang Qing said coldly. The indifferent words made Oles' whole body tremble slightly, and his mood suddenly changed. Very nervous. I understand, my lord, forgive me, Oles said in a trembling voice. Lead the way. With a wave of Yang Qing's hand, Oles wiped his sweat and walked forward. The men in black suits and sunglasses spread out consciously at this time, surrounded Yang Qing and the three of them, and looked around cautiously to prevent any sudden incidents from happening. Oles led the way at the forefront, taking every step carefully, with the legendary adult behind him, so he couldn't help but be nervous. At this time, Asuna Atlan's eyes were full of shock. They looked at Yang Qing's back in front of them, and suddenly felt that this familiar person had become unfamiliar. Lucifer, is he a Tianlong person? Asuna trembled, her voice trembled, and her eyes were filled with fear. She is also a noble herself, so she naturally understands what identity the Tianlong people represent. The pirate world is divided into countless islands, on which large, medium and small islands form human gathering places of different scales. Towns, villages, countries, among these different scales, each has its own rank of nobility. Asuna's rank, that is, the nobles of the town. But the person in front of him is the legendary heavenly dragon man. With their identities, facing the Tianlong people, they can only kneel. Of Asuna saw where Oles Saint walked, countless civilians on both sides of the road, or ordinary nobles, their expressions changed, and they fell to the ground deeply, not even peeking. Even the navy and both sides of the army fell to their knees. Facing such a world aristocrat, they dared not lift their heads. He is a Tianlong person, his name is Oles Sheng. Yang Qing replied softly with a smile. Really a celestial dragon? Asuna and Atlan looked at the tall and thin back in front of them in horror. This heavenly dragon walked slowly and even seemed very cautious. He seemed to be afraid of something and nervous. This scene made both of them feel unbelievable. The world's noblest with the highest status in the world, the Tianlong people actually have something to fear and fear. Then you? Asuna asked in a trembling voice. She suddenly thought of an answer that was absolutely impossible for her. Atlan also looked at Yang Qing in shock, his heart beating violently. You're right, I'm also a celestial dragon, my name is Lucifer Saint. The last word, Saint, came out, and the whole body of the two of them was shocked, and they felt a little dizzy. It turned out to be true, her man turned out to be a Tianlong person. But how can a Tianlong person be a pirate? It will even be the world-famous Great Pirate Death. Moreover, the Tianlong people in front were so afraid of him. Facing the doubts of the two, Yang Qing just smiled slightly, and then said with a smile, a person with strength, no matter where they are, is worthy of respect. Did you say so, Oles' Holy Highness? Turning his head, Yang Qing asked the figure in front of him. Oles shuddered, then squeezed out a smile, turned his head and said, this lady, sir, His Holiness Lucifer is right. Next, in Asuna Atlan's dreamlike state, the three were taken to a hotel like a palace by Oles. Lord Lucifer Saint, this is a small hotel for you. Although it is not as good as the palace of the Tianlong people, it is also the best place to live here. Oles introduced nervously, with an awkward smile on his face. Also, Oles has prepared a small surprise for you. You will see it after you enter the house. I hope you are satisfied. Oh, how are you preparing for what I ordered? Yang Qing looked at the hotel in front of him, nodded and asked. Everything has been arranged properly. The staff of the World Court will not go against your wishes. Oles said confidently. After all, no one here dares to offend you. Nodding with satisfaction, Yang Qing said with a smile. Then, you have worked so hard for you, you can retire. Yes. Oles finally breathed a sigh of relief. It seemed that his own life would not be in any danger. In addition, 3 days later, Oles prepared a banquet for you to let you know each other. Some figures in the World Court also facilitate the implementation of your plan. Quote. Understood. Yang Qing nodded and said, after 3 days, you can call me. After speaking, Yang Qing brought Asuna and Atlan into the luxurious hotel. He could see that there was something wrong with the state of the two at this time. Seeing the 3 figures of Yang Qing disappear, Oles' waist, which had been slightly bent, finally straightened up. He let out a long breath, and then smiled. Finally, it worked. He successfully met this legendary figure and left a good impression in his heart. If you really wait for him to rise, no, at this moment, he has already risen. This world-famous big man, the combat power in his hands, I am afraid that there is no need for any strong naval force to be weak. The arrogant smile appeared on Oles Saint's face again, and his hidden noble breath came out again. Taking a slow step, Oles moved towards. This chapter is not over. Click on the next page to continue reading. Go to your own place. Just when he was halfway, he suddenly saw a tall and thin figure running towards here quickly. He couldn't help but narrow his eyes, and then his heart trembled slightly. Your Highness Jace. When the thin figure approached him, Oles greeted with a smile. Jess Saint was stunned for a moment, then looked at Oles. At first glance, he didn't seem to recognize him. He was a little puzzled. After 3 breaths, he suddenly realized, your brother Oles, and you're going to touch him here. To you. It's me. That's right, I didn't expect His Majesty Jess to remember me. A big smile appeared on Oles' face, then he pointed to the back and said, His Royal Highness Lucifer, it's over there. You'll see him when you walk there. Thank you, Jace Saint thanked. Hee, I understand the mood of His Highness Jace, so I won't disturb the chance for the two of you to meet. Let's talk next time. Seeing the excited and anxious expression on Jace's face, Oles naturally understood and said quickly. Goodbye then. Jace Saint trotted out of here. Chapter 238 The real man must be able to eat. When Jace walked quickly to the hotel where Yang Qing was, Yang Qing had already entered the hotel with Asuna and Atlan. The interior decoration of the hotel is magnificent. The huge lobby is paved with bright red carpets like blood, and the huge crystal chandeliers hang high on the ceiling, exuding a misty light. There were 2 rows of young waiters and waitresses in black suits, each with a smile, and when the 3 of them entered, they bowed slightly and were unusually polite. Please come here, His Highness Oles Holy High has already ordered. The beautiful and charming woman stepped forward slowly. Her slender legs were long and white, wearing open-toed high-heeled shoes. Her feet were obsessed, and she was small. Short waist is also extraordinarily fascinating and people. Her smile is very gentle, and her voice is like an oriole bird, clear and clear. Yeah. Nodding, Yang Qing walked up with Asuna and Atlan. The entire hotel has obviously been arranged by Ozli for a long time. Apart from these services and waiters, there is no one else in Nuoda's hotel. After reaching the 3rd floor, the woman took the 3 to a huge room. After entering the house, the 3 of them saw that this house only has more than 100 square meters in the living room, and there are more bedrooms and balconies than they can see at a glance. The interior decoration is even more magnificent. The crystal chandelier exudes warm light like natural stars, and the atmosphere in the room is very soft. The food is ready for you. The woman smiled softly, and a group of men and women in black suits appeared behind her. They went to the huge long table, removed the plates from the food, and stood on either side. Yang Qing and the 3 were a little stunned when they saw the food on the table. A table full of aroma and flavor, just looking at it can arouse their appetite. There are 83 dishes in total. We have gathered dozens of chefs from all over the world to carefully prepare this table of sumptuous dishes for you. I hope you are satisfied. The woman said softly. Yang Qing nodded and sat down with Asuna Atlan. Atlan's eyes already glowed, and he was swallowing saliva constantly, seeing Yang Qing shaking his head and smiling. In addition, then the woman smiled again and clapped her hands. Dozens of women with beautiful faces and slender statures in light gauze clothes walked out from all over the room, all with charming smiles, and big watery eyes staring at Yongqing and Atlan, seeming to flash brightly. Light. Yongqing was a little speechless. These women, he understood what was going on at a glance. 1. These women are mysterious gifts prepared for you by His Highness Ols. He said, you will like it. The woman smiled and said, they are excellent women selected from various countries. Everyone knows the tricks and postures are extremely beautiful and wonderful, and I believe that adults will enjoy the best quality service and service. Quote. Moreover, each of them is pure and clean, and they have never even touched any man before. A dangerous light flashed in Asuna's eyes. While Atlan looked at these women, her eyes were round, and saliva quietly flowed down. For him, the food and beauties in front of him are simply the biggest temptation and temptation. Yongqing also withdrew his eyes with difficulty. After noticing Asuna next to him, he smiled bitterly, and then waved his hand, let them step back. What? The woman was startled and didn't seem to react. Let them retreat, I don't need them, Yongqing said with difficulty. To put it bluntly, the dozens of women in front of them are indeed very beautiful, and they must be very good at serving people, and they are much more thoughtful than those on earth. But he couldn't. Asuna, who was beside him, had already clenched her fists. At this time, if he behaved a little bit wrongly, the woman beside him would definitely explode. I understand. The woman looked at Yongqing with a strange look. She didn't expect that someone would refuse such a good thing. Old Saint didn't tell these people Yongqing's true identity, and at their level, they couldn't get in touch with Yongqing, and even Ols was a high-ranking figure to them. Go back. The woman clapped her hands, and the dozens of beautiful girls then stepped back. You can also step back, you are not needed here. Yongqing looked at the woman and said lightly, I will greet you if I have something. Yes. With a smile and salute, the woman withdrew with a group of servants and waiters. When the door of the room was closed, Yongqing saw that Asuna's expression slowly returned to normal, and then this woman with outstanding temperament and a strong personality looked at Yongqing with a gentle smile and said, Lord Lucifer Saint, do you need anything? Yongqing swallowed and glanced at Atlan, who shook his head, also feeling that his sister at the moment was very strange. No, Yongqing stuttered. Actually, people will also have a lot of skills. Asuna looked at Yongqing tenderly. Her voice was very pleasant, and there was a little more seductiveness and humanity that she did not usually have. Goo. Yongqing swallowed again, feeling his nose a little hot. With such a beautiful figure as Asuna, if you serve him again, the taste will be his, and Yongqing will not dare to think about it anymore. However, he did not see the increasingly dangerous cold light under Asuna's gentle eyes. Eat, sister, brother-in-law. Atlan, at this time, was born to relieve the siege. Yes, eat. Yongqing responded quickly. Then, without saying a word, he grabbed all the meat in front of him and swallowed it. There was a lot of food on the table, but with the amount of food for 3 people, there was no problem. This chapter is not over. Click on the next page to continue reading. Yongqing is the one who can eat the most. He has almost 3/5 of the meals by himself, and he still has no stomach after eating it. Brother-in-law, you can really eat. Atlan exclaimed. Even Asuna was stunned. Real men, you have to be able to eat. Yongqing gave a thumbs up, mouth full of food, and said vaguely, this meal is really good. Atlan, if you want to become stronger, you have to become can eat. Quote. Really? Atlan's eyes lit up and he said loudly, then I'm welcome. Looking at the 2 men in front of her, Asuna's face darkened and she cursed in a low voice. 2 foodies. Quote. Then, she looked at Yongqing with a complicated look. To her surprise, the identity of this man turned out to be a heavenly dragon. Chapter 239 Brothers Reunion. When the 3 of Yongqing were eating, a capable man had already entered the hotel. He was dressed in a fine silk robe, and his eyebrows were very similar to Yongqing, but his appearance was more noble than Yongqing. At this moment, the man's eyes were full of excitement and joy, and he walked upstairs quickly. When the service and staff in the hotel saw this figure, their expressions changed and they all knelt down. But when he was about to kneel down, he was stopped by the man. "I don't have time to talk to you all, so please excuse me. Which room is the person who went upstairs just now?" the man said quickly, with a very anxious tone. Soon, the waiter did not dare to hide and told him. As soon as the man turned his head, his back quickly disappeared here. After about 30 seconds, the man took a deep breath and pushed open the front door. "Big brother." The man pushed open the door, looked at Yang Qing who was eating and drinking in the room, stunned for a moment, and then shouted happily. Yang Qing tilted his head and looked out the door, a little stunned. 3 seconds later he recognized this person. Jace. He was a little unsure. This little guy has grown so big. Except for the side he saw in the Holy Land last time, he never saw his younger brother again. After such a long time, the little guy with the snot bubble on his nose has grown so tall, so big, and so handsome. "It's me, brother, long time no see." Jace calmed down and walked in with a smile in his eyes. His noble aura was particularly strong, and as soon as he entered the door, he suppressed his aura, causing Asuna and Atlan to stop their movements. Yang Qing laughed loudly, swallowed the food in his mouth, then wiped his mouth with his hand, strode in front of Jace, and patted Jace's shoulder with greasy hands. "I don't see you very much. You kid, you are so tall, I am really surprised." Yang Qing said with some surprise, carefully observing his own younger brother. This younger brother has a lot in common with himself in appearance. At first glance, the two are almost exactly the same. Only when they get closer will they find the difference between the two. Yang Qing's face is resolute and strong, handsome, full of domineering momentum, like a sharp sword, while Jace is gentle. He is closer to the elegance of a noble, but he is also sharp-edged so that people dare not look down on him. After so many years, the stalker who followed his ass has grown up. "Brother, did you soil my clothes as soon as you came here?" Jace said with a smile, then sat beside Yang Qing. "It seems that the etiquette of the nobles has been almost thrown away by you, haha. You kid, how dare you talk about your brother?" Yang Qing rubbed Jace's black hair. "When your brother is so powerful, you still can't walk." Hee hee. Jace laughed, and then said, "As soon as I heard my brother came here, I ran over immediately. There are not many chances to see my brother. Even the first few contacts were made through fish. Where's the phone bug from Isle of Man? Yeah, I'm getting busier and busier, and I rarely go home. I don't know how my father and mother are doing." Yang Qing sighed, feeling a little ashamed. "They're all fine, but sometimes I miss my brother a lot, and I don't know when you'll be back, brother," Jace asked. "Come on, after this one is over, it's almost done." Yang Qing narrowed his eyes and said with a smile. Jace was a little puzzled. "What?" "Nothing. Why are you here?" Yang Qing asked strangely. "I was bored at home, so I came to the World Court to do some things and exercise myself." Jess said with a smile, "I am now the inspector of the World Court's CP organization." Inspector. Yang Qing didn't know what this was for, but he was still happy for his younger brother. "Yes, work hard. My younger brother is also doing well, haha. Hey, I've been working hard with your example, brother. Also, who are these two? Don't you introduce me?" Jace turned his eyes to Asuna and Atlan, and asked curiously. "This is Asuna, this kid is Asuna's younger brother, Atlan." Yang Qing introduced with a smile. "Hello, I'm Asuna. I'm Atlan." Asuna and Atlan stood up slightly and saluted, but it was the etiquette of a noble. Jace looked at the two of them, his eyes flashed, and he nodded with a smile. "Hello, I'm Jace." Asuna and Atlan looked a little serious. It was obvious that the two in front of them were brothers, so this guy who looked a bit like Yang Qing was also a Tianlong person. "Does my brother have something to do when he comes to the World Court this time?" Jace asked. "Maybe I can help my brother with something." Yang Qing laughed loudly and said, "It's the elder brother who covers the younger brother, how can I ask the younger brother for your help? Don't worry, everything is under my control. With a smile on his face, Jess said reverently, since I was a child, my brother has been so good, and I also really want to follow my brother to be a pirate. But don't, you're leaving. My parents will hate me. Once I leave, they will have only one son left. Ha ha. Yang Qing hurriedly stopped him. That's right. In 3 days, I will go to a banquet. Then you can go with me. Since you plan to work in the World Court, you should hone your skills. In 3 days. Okay. Jace was stunned for a moment, then nodded. He came to the World Court, and everything was done with his own talents. Although the identity of the Tianlong people has a great influence, but the identity does not. This chapter is not over. Click on the next page to continue reading. Representative ability. His ability, among many colleagues and superiors, are recognized. The two brothers have not seen each other for a long time, and after meeting, there are many things to say. Then, together with Asuna Atlan, the four of them raised their cups and celebrated happily. For the next 3 days, the four of them spent time together, visiting various places in the imperial court of the world, and playing together, and they lived happily. What surprised Yang Qing was that his younger brother actually had kung fu in his body, which was beyond his expectations. But when asked who taught him, this kid kept his mouth shut, very mysterious. Need a devil fruit. Brother, if you have a chance, I'll help you choose one. Yang Qing said with a smile, the Death God pirates have been fighting continuously, but they have obtained a lot of devil fruits, and he still has leftovers. Devil fruit. Jace was stunned for a moment, then nodded with a smile, if there is, then it will trouble my brother. 3 days later, Ols visited Yang Qing and bowed his head respectfully. My lord, everything is ready. Chapter 240 The Hidden Power. Are you all ready? Yang Qing squinted and smiled, okay, then go meet them, and then go find the top 5 figures in the World Court. Ols was stunned for a moment, then shut up. He understood. I am afraid that the biggest purpose of the person in front of him is actually the 5 people with the highest status in the world's imperial court. Sir, please come with me. Ols led the way. Yang Qing, Atlan, Jace, Asuna and others were behind them, and the group walked quickly towards the front. About half an hour later, Ols, Yang Qing and the others came to a hidden room. When Ols entered, all the people standing inside stood up respectfully and knelt down towards Ols. Yang Qing about swept away. There were more than 50 people crowded in this small house, densely packed, with their foreheads pressed against the ground, their whole bodies trembling and shaking slightly. Get up, I'll bring the adults here. Ols said arrogantly. After saying a sentence, these people stood up and turned their eyes to Yang Qing, and then when they saw Jess, they gave a slight stunned. These people, some of them are my subordinates, some are my superiors. Jace said softly in Yang Qing's ear. Oh, haven't you revealed your identity on weekdays? Yang Qing asked. No, I prefer to use my strength to win the respect of others. Jace whispered. Asuna listened to the conversation between the two brothers, and at this moment felt that the two were quite similar to some extent. They all believe in themselves the same, and they all believe that only what they can get through their own efforts is the most real. Sir, the 50-odd people in the field, some have big belly, some are as thin as bamboo poles, but without exception, all of them have a lot of energy. Authority, this is the momentum that is cultivated when you are in a high position on weekdays, and it is difficult to imitate. Yeah. Nodding, Yang Qing glanced around the crowd, and then said solemnly, I came here, but I have no other idea. I'm not interested in taking control of the internal affairs of the World Court. What I want to tell you is, do things for me, and I will never treat you badly. However, if you are an enemy of me, there will only be one end. His eyes suddenly became sharp, and Yang Qing's right hand trembled slightly. Boom. The whole house trembled violently. All the accessories, tables and chairs in the room were shattered at this moment, the debris flying down from the sky, and at the same time as it fell, it was broken down into smaller things again. For a time, the whole house fluttered, very spectacular and beautiful. Like everything in this house, it instantly shatters. The voice was decisive and tough, and Yang Qing's eyes were full of murderous intent. I think you all know my identity. A sinister smile appeared on the corner of his mouth. I don't think you will be willing to bear the means of the god of death. In fact, for me, your identity, status, and my career are of no use. All I need you to do is to make the world court lean towards me in this direction. I think this, Old Street has already made it clear to you. Yang Qing's voice came out slowly, and the whole room was very quiet. Sweat dripped from Ol's forehead quietly, and Yang Qing's right hand patted his shoulder. Really, Ol's Holy Highness. Yes, my lord, I have made it very clear to them that these people are the most loyal subordinates of the lord. It's just, Ol said nervously. Just what? Yang Qing asked. It's just that there are still some radicals. In the case of bad adults, this includes some people from the Navy side and the Army side. Ol said quickly. Oh, Yang Qing raised her eyebrows, then laughed, really. He stared at Ol's closely, then glanced at the group of people in front of him. Wherever his eyes went, everyone's head was under their heads, and their bodies trembled and trembled slightly. However, I don't think the result will change. Right, Yang Qing said with a smile. No, definitely not. No matter who stands in the front, the adults must win. Ols reluctantly smiled. That's good, I hope you won't let me down. Yang Qing said to Ols, actually, I'm still very satisfied with you, and I don't want another candidate. The little one understands that the adults will not be disappointed. Ols said quickly. If you resist, if you disagree, just kill them. Use all your methods. The outcome of this incident must be in my favor. Yang Qing's eyes were suddenly sharp, and his eyes were full of killing intent. Do you understand? Understood. Everyone present said nervously and loudly, not daring to make any excuses. Also, this is my younger brother. He is interested in serving in the imperial court of the world. On weekdays, I hope you will take good care of you. Yang Qing withdrew from Jess. Jess looked helpless at the moment. In a trance, he was a kind of bully. A feeling of, hello everyone, Jace smiled. After several years of tempering, he has matured and naturally knows what to do on this occasion. Your Highness Jace as well. Everyone said in unison. Very well, I have other things to do, you can do it yourself. Yang Qing smiled and nodded, then turned and left. There are many forces under Yang Qing's hands, like the presence of such forces. It's just that This chapter is not over. Click on the next page to continue reading. On weekdays, it would not appear in such occasions. With his status, he has no time to manage these miscellaneous things. Even in the world's imperial court, the Navy, the Army, and the countries of the Great Waterway, there are his hidden forces. This is the wonderful thing brought about by the status of the New World Overlord, the Tianlong people. He walks in justice and evil, light and darkness, but is very natural. Seeing Yang Qing leave, the people present breathed a sigh of relief. This guy who is famous all over the world is really putting too much pressure on them. Such a big man, under normal circumstances, is absolutely impossible to see. Hurry up and obey your lord's will. I didn't know how to deal with those stubborn guys before, but now it's easy to deal with. Kill them all. Obviously our heads are worth more than their heads. Those sailors, army, and delusions of confrontation with adults, are stubborn, looking for a dead end. The high-ranking guys present at the scene showed their minions. Their eyes were fierce, and they had already moved to kill.